I'd like to welcome you to the regular school committee session of October 27th, 2010. Everyone is present except for Mr. Higgins, who's not available tonight due to a work commitment. Okay, thank you. And oh, Katie made it. That's good. It's nice to see so many people here. We have a lot of recognitions to go through tonight, so we're extremely pleased that you are all able to make it. Our first item is approval of items by consensus, and Mrs. Benton.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We have three items under the consent agenda. First, the approval of the minutes of September 22nd, regular session, the acceptance of a donation for the Wildcat Project from Carmen Cunningham of the Cleaner Spot, and approval of an out-of-state field trip for the DECA Sports Conference in Orlando, Florida.
Okay. We're going to take that as, Mr. Veal?
Well, I just had a comment on the minutes from the prior meeting.
Sure.
A correction to it. On page 2, I guess in the third paragraph, it suggests I recommended exploring additional rebate programs. I recommended exploring additional rebate programs from other utilities, such as National Grid Gas, not municipalities, which is what it says there.
We'll fix it.
And then on page, while we're doing the corrections, on page 1, we have me double book right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
This is Jim McCain. So just one of those. Okay. We'll vote these all, and then we're going to have an acceptance of the donation. The Cleaner Spot is here tonight, which we're very pleased about. So does anyone have any more comments on the minutes? Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda. Mr. Hayes.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Marchese. Okay, any more questions or anything? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. I'd like to invite
Mr. Cunningham.
Mr. Cunningham.
And Mr. Tracy.
Mr. Tracy, here we go.
Eric, can you explain what the Wildcat Project is while we're getting ready?
Sure. The Wildcat Project was started last year from a number of people who were involved in drug and alcohol education and dealing with a lot of our students and some of the issues they were wrestling with during the school year, during prom time, weekends, things like that. The project expanded last year on a $6,000 grant from the Chana Group, who funded our ability to bring in some speakers to talk to kids about decision-making, and also some speakers around prom time that were excellent to be able to get that message across to kids and families. We had about 1,000 people in the gym in a pre-prom meeting, and worked on some of the community building pieces. And this year we received a grant again and have some other monies to bolster the projects, if you will. We're still working on portions of the money, and tonight's donation is an example of the community jumping in and helping us out with this, with the project, which has now become a community project. So,
On behalf of the school committee, I'd really like to thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. The Cleaner Spot is committed to the youth of Wilmington, and our Safer Prom program, in which we donate proceeds from every tuxedo rental, goes toward those kinds of programs. And the Wildcat Project is a project that we're very proud to be a part of. So thank you very much. We hope to make it even bigger next year. So thank you. You'll have a hard time cashing that one, so I'll get it.
thank you very much.
Right hand, smile, 1, 2, 3. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay. It's another example of the community of Wilmington working, different aspects of the community working together. It's so wonderful. Our next item is the Student School Committee. Katie and John?
Hi, thank you. I apologize for my appearance. I just came from a late volleyball game. Firstly, the boys soccer team and the girls field hockey team have both made it to playoffs this year. Many clubs had meetings this week and have set into a regular schedule. Knitting Club had a meeting yesterday, Peace has one tomorrow, Science Club and Drama Club are also meeting, and many have put on many successful events and fundraisers. DECA Club, for example, just took a field trip to Bentley College for a leadership conference on Tuesday the 19th. Drama Club is preparing for its winter musical and holding auditions for its one act this November. In support of a drug-free lifestyle, students wore red today for Red Ribbon Week, a national campaign that began in 1985. The Student Council is preparing a fundraiser to help support research for cystic fibrosis. This Sunday, the band is performing in the Woburn Halloween Parade, and Strings Attached just ran a successful fundraiser last Friday that will allow them to award 3 $1,000 scholarships. And lastly, Mr. and Mrs. WHS competition, high school competition, is November 10th. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Katie. Okay. Good. We're busy as usual at the high school. That's great. All right. Our next item of business would be the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I have 8 items on the agenda, and the first 2 are very special items. The first is probably a superintendent's favorite thing to do in the whole year of doing the job, and that's awarding a certificate to a high school senior that epitomizes all that we want our high school students to be. This was an easy choice in selecting the candidate that is going to be awarded this certificate this evening. And the reason it's done this early in the year is that the hope that the candidate can use it as part of their resume for applying to college. What's fun for me is the person that is going to receive this award is someone that I've gotten to know over the past 4 years. And that doesn't always happen when you have a school system of over 3,000 students. But Katie has stood out at the high school since the moment she walked through the door. She is a very impressive young woman who not only has excelled academically and athletically, but the part that I love most about Katie is her huge heart and her willingness to give back to the community. Katie doesn't know how to say no. Now, this award has to be shared with her entire family because we all know that it takes a supportive family to help all of our students succeed. So it's my pleasure this evening to award Catherine Ioki with a Certificate of Academic Excellence from the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents in honor of all that she has accomplished in the Wilmington Public Schools. Congratulations, Katie. I'm going to do the second one for me, Dad. And now can we have her family come in and join for the picture? Congratulations. Thank you so much. My pleasure. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Catherine.
One more. I stopped it.
Next, I'm pleased to honor two teachers who have chosen to retire this fall. Ooh. Okay. All right, I'm going to ask the school committee to go up front so that it'll make it. The first person that we're going to be honoring is Cheryl Farrar, who was hired in 1978 as the kindergarten teacher at the Shawshene Elementary School. In September of 1979, she moved to the Glen Road School as a grade 1 teacher. In September of 1980, was appointed to the position of gifted and talented teacher. She then returned to the kindergarten classroom until the layoffs occurred in the early 80s. Cheryl was recalled to a grade 4 teaching position in January of 1984, but was once again laid off in June of 1984. Cheryl was called back to Wilmington as a grade 2 teacher in September of 1986, and in 1987 she returned to the kindergarten classroom where she has remained until her retirement. Cheryl has taught at Shawshene, Glen Road School, Woburn Street School, and at the Boutwell School. Some of the principals and assistant principals she has served under were Dr. Charles Toomey, Richard DeRosa, Dick Gorham, Dolores Silva, Robert Barrett, Robert Arsenal, Robert Apoloni, and Sandra Dumont. I told Cheryl that she was coming in this evening that what I'm going to miss most is on Friday, because every Halloween, I always look forward to seeing what her costume was, and we don't get to share in those festivities anymore, but we want to congratulate you, Cheryl.
He's always pushing me around. This is a good pushing, right past the school case. They go.
With the wheelchair this year, you can have a creative costume.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She's taking autographs.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm also very proud to say that I love teaching in Wilmington, and Katie was one of mine. Thank you.
It's like a passing of an era show. I'm really going to miss you.
Thank you.
I'm going to do this from here. Our next retiree is also a kindergarten teacher, Marguerite Peggy Morano. Peggy was hired in 1973 as one of Wilmington's first kindergarten teachers. Her kindergarten class was at St. Thomas Church, where it remained until 1976. Peggy and Wilmington's kindergarten moved to Wildwood School. In September of 1979, Peggy moved to Woburn Street School, and in 1980 took a leave to raise her daughter and subsequently resigned for that purpose. But her love of kindergarten brought her back, and she returned to Wilmington in 1986 to the Wildwood School. She did spend some time at the Boutwell School as well. Peggy's first supervisor was Juanita Jackson, who was Wilmington's kindergarten director at the inception of the kindergarten program. She also worked under Dick Gorham, Dolores Silva, Bob Arsenal, Robert Barrett, Michael Tikhonov, Marian Ablov, Jason Fredette, and Aaron Haley. And besides all of her contributions to kindergarten, Peggy has also been one of the greatest contributors to the CARES program. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to be CARES without Peggy, but we wish her well.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks.
In your packet this evening is just a copy of the October 1st enrollment. We have, as of October 1st, 3,796 students in the Wilmington Public Schools. These numbers will be used as we move forward with our budget. I've also included class size reports from the middle school and the high school, and as you can see, we are within contractual limits on all the class sizes. And I have to tell you that Wilmington's very lucky because there's now a new service on the DESE, which is called the DART report, where you can look and compare your school system to other school systems. And when you look at the class sizes of high schools in surrounding communities, their classes are up to 30 and 35. Next town over, elementary classrooms are at 28 to 30, and the students in Wilmington are very fortunate to have small class sizes, and that's because of the school committee and the town support of the budget. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question, Sue?
Yeah.
And I do know the answer to this since I asked you via email, but for the public's knowledge, I noticed that the sides of town seem to be a little uneven at the moment. There's 62 students. There's 62 more students at the Wildwood than at the Butwell. There's 100 more students at the Woburn Street than the Shawsheen, and 46 more students at the North than the West. And I guess how are we going to address this going forward?
Thanks for bringing that up. The division across town has always been one that was made in order to be equitable for both sides, but we've seen extreme growth on the north side of town, and I'm going to be putting together a committee this year to look at some relining, I hate to say the word, relinings of the community so that incoming kindergarten students could be shifted over to Shawsheen moving forward. So I'll be bringing that to you in the fall, in the winter.
And my second question, which I know the answer to, but the public doesn't. So this year we have 338 eighth grade students and 235 ninth grade students. So my question was, where are eighth grade students disappearing to? The Shawsheen Tech, private schools, et cetera. How many do we generally lose in a year? And with the possible renovation, expansion, or new high school, do you see this changing?
I hope it changes. We traditionally, the tech takes about between 75 and 80 eighth graders, and we have another about 20 students that go to private or parochial schools. We have seen in surrounding communities that have built new high schools there, students returning to the school, and we hope to do it. Also, this year I've asked Mr. Tracy and his staff to think about doing a new eighth grade open house, and actually I think we should be doing it in sixth grade because that's when parents start thinking about high school, and getting our students involved in the open house and inviting the students with their parents. We're going to do this in the winter to have them see what's going on, what exciting things are happening at Wilmington High School, and then hopefully do a virtual one that we can have on the website so that we can attract more people.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question. You have in your packets this evening the report of results. This report is really a report on what each of the schools achieved last year in relationship to their school improvement plans. If you recall, 5 years ago we shifted in our thinking around school improvement plans, and we asked schools to focus on 2 or 3 goals and to make those measurable goals. And although we don't always reach the goals we have, I think that you would agree with me that much work has taken place from pre-K to 12 in the district last year. I just want to highlight a few of the examples at each of the schools. The Boutwell and the Wildwood School took on the implementation strategies around assessment last year, and we actually brought Dibbles into Wilmington and started doing some assessment of the kindergarten students, and this data will help us as we track students moving forward. In addition, the early childhood centers really grappled with technology this past year and enhanced their homeschool communication through their websites, and really teachers got involved in creating search engines and doing better communication with parents through technology at home. And we've gotten positive results from that. Shawshene and Woburn Street worked on data. And if you recall, last year the school committee was able to fund money to have us purchase the Gates McGinnity reading test. We didn't have a standardized reading test that we could get as a baseline for our students, and now we have that in place. And it's being administered. It was administered last year to first and second grade. First and second grade students. So we now have a baseline to use with our students and parents on how students are progressing in reading.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Is that shared, are the results shared with the parents? It didn't mention it in here, so
I
I
don't
wasn't
know.
sure.
That's a good question. They should be. We'll have to talk to Jerry about that.
Yeah, we didn't do
Yeah.
that this year. Basically, it was for the current teachers and the receiving teachers, so that they would have some initial baseline data on the students, but it's something we certainly
Okay.
do.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great idea. So this, we will track this information and use it as we follow the students through. As far as, another goal was assessment measures to collect data on instruction in reading and math. And we piloted the Houghton Mifflin leveled reading assessment passage test was conducted both at Shawshene and Woburn Street. Again, good, more data to give us to see how our students are progressing. We're continuing to create benchmark assessments in the area of math, and we are utilizing the new Study Island web-based program for assessment for our students as well. We're really trying to put as much data as we can into the hands of classroom teachers so that they can take children from where the data tells them they're at and bring them along, and then be able to do post-assessment to see the progress and track the progress. And lastly, again, Woburn Street and Shawshene were involved in technology. We had teachers trained in using Study Island, a lot of technology workshops last year, and it's continuing actually this year with teachers participating. And I think you'll see in the budget requests for more in-focus projectors and smart boards, because teachers are really figuring out how to incorporate technology as a teaching tool, because that's the way we hope to use it, as a teaching tool. The North and Intermediate had hoped to increase their math scores, and unfortunately we're not totally successful, but we're working on identifying individual students who have not made progress and putting together a plan in order to support them in making progress. Our ELA scores went up, and that was good to see. We're also, both schools are working on social growth and development and have active student councils, peer mediation programs going on, and this year, as you'll see in the school improvement plan, now transferring that to focus more on anti-bullying activities. But the peer mediation and second step program that the teachers have adopted at that level has really started to show progress. The middle school worked on equity and consistency within each grade level's curriculum. They're working on creating curriculum maps for all areas in the curriculum and having consistent experiences at all grade levels. This is a pet peeve of mine. I'd like students to, all sixth graders, to have the same amount of field trips and activities and not have it depend on what team you're on. And Ms. McMiniman is working hard on helping the teachers to, giving them time to work together to make sure that we're coordinating those efforts. In addition, we're still working on improving our MCAS at the middle school. We did not achieve adequate yearly progress in subgroups in mathematics, and we are continuing to try and identify what the issues are and why these students aren't making progress, and we'll continue to do so this year and provide some supplementary programs for the students. And lastly, the middle school is working ongoing violence prevention strategies, core values, responsibility, citizenship, and confidence. Their mission statement, they're working, have brought in, last year brought in activities on the release days to build team character building and team building, and this year we'll be working on anti-bullying activities. The high school completed their NEASC accreditation, and as you all know from the report, we still have not heard yet, have we? Haven't heard yet whether we've passed, but I think we have passed, and I want to again commend the high school on that. In addition, the high school tried out some team-taught classes in science and math for students that needed extra support, and we saw good results. And we're trying that model down at the middle school of trying to team up a math teacher with a special ed class teacher to help those students. So that's the report of results from last year.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the report?
Okay, now,
I just have a couple of things. One was, I'll be really interested to see on the Fountas and Pinnell assessment system that people are using, because they're so well known in the area. And Irene Fountas, Leslie University has, she's really done a lot of work, and Pinnell, they're excellent.
and while you were away across the ocean, Irene Fountas actually came last Wednesday and
No.
spoke to the staff, and she was amazing.
I missed her.
Absolutely incredible.
Oh, mean of you
Yeah.
to mention it. Oh, my gosh, if she comes again, I'd love to know. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you all to get to see her. And my other thing is, will the middle school let us know, on page 15 it says, we must take at least one corrective action per the No Child Left Behind statute. We know at some point what that is?
Yes, and Christine will tell you when we do this next report.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you, this was a very thorough report. It really explained to us all how well everybody did on their improvement plan for last year into this year, so thank you.
So this year, we thought we'd try something different, and I asked Eric Tracy to take the district-wide school improvement plan and put it into a little presentation overview that you and I need to move.
Okay.
It should be right over here.
Oh, okay.
Really okay.
All right.
What?
But she's got to see it. She's got to turn around to see it.
I'll go over this way.
We'll start the discussion. We need to do the lights.
Should be all right. Sure, play network to keep up.
Can this be seen by the audience at home? Do the lights need to go out?
Probably.
We're going to put it on our website as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's clearing up.
It'll get brighter.
Okay.
Correct?
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wilmington Public Schools presentation on the district-wide school improvement plan for 2010 and 2011. In Wilmington, school improvement planning is important business. We use specific strategies coupled with action plans that have measurable results. At the North and West Intermediates, they would like to increase the percentage of students in the proficient and advanced categories in ELA in both grades 4 and grade 5. They would also like to increase the percentage of students in the proficient and advanced categories in math in both grade 4 and grade 5. They want to positively affect the social growth and development of all students in the school community. At the Shawshene Elementary and Woburn Street schools, they would like to use data results to inform instruction and to augment the implementation of the reading program by providing appropriate interventions guided by the response to intervention process. They would also like to administer benchmark testing to inform instruction and to indicate student progress in math. They want to continue to provide a safe and secure environment for learning. And specific to the Shawshene Elementary, they would like to have the aggregate meet their MCAS 2011 improvement target. At the Boutwell and Wildwood Early Childhood Centers, they would like to use data results in reading to continue to inform and differentiate instruction. They would also like to use data results in math to continue to inform and differentiate instruction, while continuing to provide a safe and secure environment for learning. At the middle school, they want to articulate and document all current curriculum maps for publication. They They want to have aggregate and all student subgroups meet their improvement target. They want to decrease the number of students in the MCAS needs improvement and warning performance categories in mathematics, English, language arts, and science and technology. And to promote an inclusive school community free from bullying and harassment. At the high school, they would like to begin to address the recommendations of the NEAS-NC Accreditation Visiting Team report. They would also like to continue development of the new 5-year plan and begin to plan the study and redesign of the high school library. Several keys to our success. The first is alignment with the district strategic plan. The second is we must be data-driven. And the third, we must be results-oriented. In the words of Mike Schmoker, the combination of 3 concepts constitutes the foundation for positive improvement results: meaningful teamwork, clear measurable goals, and the regular collection and analysis of performance data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. What I'd like to do is invite members from each of the schools to come up and just highlight some of the ways they plan on attacking their school improvement plan, if that's okay with you.
That's wonderful, thank you.
And we'll start with the Boutwell in the Wildwood Early Childhood Center, Sandra Vermont and Erin Healy. While they're coming up, I had the pleasure of attending the Mass Association of Superintendents conference down in Foxborough today, and I attended a couple of workshops, one given by Pat Larkin, principal of Burlington High, who's really infusing technology into the high school, and they're going to a one-to-one computer school next year at the high school. But also, Chris Matthews was the keynote speaker, and he was talking about how our use of technology today is one that we must teach our students how to use. Particularly, I thought this was very interesting, social networking tools, because he said the only way our students are going to get jobs is through connections. No more is it, I can do it on my own, I'm going to go out and get my own job. He said we really need to teach them to develop a core of 5 or 6, whoever their high school friends are, college friends are, and stay connected to them. And when they're out looking for jobs, is you take the first job someone can help you get, and then you find another job. But the social connections is the only way today in this marketplace that we're seeing people getting jobs. So it was fascinating. He talked a lot more about how important education is for all of our students to succeed in this global 21st century environment, and how now our students, in the workshop I was in with Burlington, we were talking with the principal from Indiana through Skyping on sharing ideas on how staff can get involved in using more different technology. So it really was exciting, and I was with Neil Ellis, our head of technology department, and we've got some great ideas we've brought back that we want to have our administrators try, because it's going to be exciting to share these. And I say this as we have the Early Childhood Center come up to us, because I would invite all of you to stop in the computer labs at each of their schools to see our 5-year-olds and preschoolers working on computers and the incredible activities that they're involved in. It really is something to see. Introduce Erin and Sandy. Good evening.
Good evening.
I think we'd like to begin first by thanking the members of our school council. On the Wildwood side, we had Mrs. Jennifer Allen, Mrs. Jennifer Edderburn, and Mr. Michael Monteforte, as well as our teacher representative, Mrs. Emily Vieira, who helped the Wildwood side of town.
And on Boutwell side, our parent reps were Mrs. Kathy McLaughlin, Mrs. Lisa Papanow, Mrs. Deanna Wright, and our teacher rep was Miss Megan Ryland. We really appreciate all their support, in addition to our fearless leaders back here, Mr. Apolloni and Mr. Sanderson.
So to speak a little bit about our school improvement plan this year, as Mrs. Benton mentioned, and as you read in our summary, last year we adopted the Dibbles assessment to use in the kindergarten. And this year, we'd like to take it a step further and to continue to use the data that we gather with our Dibbles benchmark assessment to use it to inform our instruction, but also to establish our response to intervention groups, which will be starting at the early childhood level. So basically, we're looking to begin to differentiate the instruction more within the classroom to provide supports to struggling students, as well as to enrich the learning of other students right in the classroom. So we began this year with the establishment of the Response to Intervention Task Force, which not only included the early childhood teachers, but also elementary teachers as well. We provided some training for all of the staff to inform them as to what response to intervention is, what it should look like in their classrooms. We've continued with the benchmark assessment using the Dibbles in reading. We've completed our fall assessment. We've shared those results with the kindergarten teachers, and now they're in the process of using those to develop their groups. They've used common planning time to create binders that are kind of like grab-and-go binders that they can use. They have all the materials right there with them. The groups are happening 3 times a week for 30 minutes. Right now at the Wildwood, and I believe at the Boutwell as well, we're working on letter recognition because it's early in the year. That's really the building blocks for where we need to go. So the teachers are off and running with that, and we're very excited to see where we go from here and what other concepts we can continue to address as the year goes on. That's our first goal. The second one is very similar, except we're addressing math. So we began the year by standardizing our benchmark assessments. We had a pre- and post-test in kindergarten. This year, our elementary math coordinator, Mrs. Terry Buscemi, worked with our vertical math team to standardize the assessment even more, so making sure that all classroom teachers had common materials as well as common scripts, so that all the students were getting the exact same experience when they were taking the pre- and post-tests. Terry Buscemi came to our beginning staff meeting to train all the staff on the changes to the standardized assessment, and they have administered the fall portion, and now they're using those results to implement appropriate strategies within our RTI model as well.
And our third goal is to continue to provide a safe and secure environment for learning. Our focus this year is going to be on the anti-bullying policy. And as all of you know, we've had the training the beginning of the school year. We have the necessary reporting forms, and we're ready to implement. Hopefully, we won't have to do that. We'd like to assist the district in supporting parent training. Right now, we're working very closely with our PACs to look at anti-bullying enrichment programs. And lastly, what we hope coming up in January is provide activities for our students around anti-bullying for Anti-Bullying Awareness Week in January. I think it's really important for us. Our children in our programs, this is their first experience with school. It's their first experience with being in a group of children in a community, in a classroom. And we take that very seriously, and we try to instill values. We're all friends, and we deal with the kids like that when we talk with them about different experiences, whether it's on the playground, at lunch, or recess, and trying to teach them positive ways to deal with other friends and to provide other ways to solve problems. So it starts really at our level, right at the preschool, and we have the preschool students with us too. So we're excited about this, and we want to continue the initiatives. Any questions? Anyone have any questions? Mr. Hayes?
Yeah, just a comment. The two things that stand out to me, obviously, are the using more data to make curriculum and instructional decisions, and a real commitment to anti-bullying, and, just great. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? So thank you very much for the plan, and it sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we all agree with Robert's remarks. Very good, thank you.
Mr. Joel Sanderson, Mr. Robert Apolloni from the Hoopin Street and Shawshene. And I'd also like to acknowledge Jason. I think I saw Jason is hiding somewhere out there. Where is Jason?
He's ready for that.
Okay. Assistant Principal at Shawsheen. Lisa King could not be here. She's teaching a class this evening.
Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to share this with you. I think we both would first like to recognize also, I've said every time we've come to these how fortunate we've been able to have such active membership in our school councils. We put out each year looking for members to serve, both parent representatives and teachers, and we've been very fortunate to have people come forth and help us out. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the members of last year's school council who helped put together this school improvement plan. Mrs. Diane Garrity, a parent representative, Mr. James Peterson, also a parent representative, Mrs. Grace Briswaz, a parent representative, and Mrs. Rena Collin, also a parent representative. Mrs. Stephanie Beauchamp, who is a grade 2 teacher at the Shawsheen, Ms. Carrie Butler, a librarian, Mrs. Joanne Miles, one of our reading specialists, and we're very fortunate to have this community member who we grabbed 4 years ago, and we keep having him come back, so we must be doing something right, Mr. James Manuel.
And on the Woburn Street side, our parent representatives, Mrs. Dana Burnham, Mrs. Christine Nally, Mrs. M.J. Burns, and our 3 teacher representatives, Mrs. Anna Kilfoyle, Mrs. Sandy Asiero, and Mrs. Janet Sinesi, in addition to Lisa King, our assistant principal.
In our first goal, we're going to continue moving forward with looking at data results, but I can't tell you how excited I am to tell you now that for many years we've been hearing about the initiative with the response to intervention, the RTI, and to actually see it now in motion and really the process really developing is quite exciting for us. I don't want to, quite frankly, I can't take the credit for it. First, I want to recognize our superintendent who really saw the need for this and allowing our 2 assistant principals, Mr. Fredette and Mr. King, to pursue this activity. She allowed them last year to go visit a school over in Chelmsford who has had this process going, has it been 5 years? 6 years. And we had 2 assistant principals who came back very excited, very motivated to get going on this. And through Mrs. Benton's agreement, we have established an RTI task force because we thought it was really good to bring all the constituents within the faculty to come together to try to get this initiative started. And we had a great response. They did a training this summer. And I'll tell you, they're gung-ho, and they've been going to the beginning of the year getting this process started. So we've already completed some initial, the training has been completed. We've already completed some initial testing of students in the first grade. Right now, we've been targeting the kindergarten in grade 1. It's our hope in the continuing years now to move it up 1 more grade next year to grade 2, followed by grade 3. And we've been getting a great response. Again, it's more data that allows us to have some focused local data that we can use in comparison to other local that we're doing to really help us to inform instruction and really to impact our instructional practices too. So we are, we're going to be able to use this and decide exactly what kids seem to be in need that may not be getting interventions at this time in determining what interventions will be very helpful in helping them to make the progress they need to be making in reading. So through all of this, the implementation, the interventions, to conduct progress monitoring, we really hope to be able to address any reading issues that are going on in the schools at both sides of town.
Our next goal focused on math and the need for additional additional data throughout the school year for our math, in the classrooms. We've been working with Terry Buscemi. She's been a great help in stabilizing our pre and post tests and really getting those standardized so that we get good information at the beginning of the year and results that we can compare at the end of the year. But we didn't have much in between throughout the school year. So what she's done, in addition to helping us establish good pacing guidelines for all teachers, so teachers are clear on what should be taught at certain points during the year, what units should be taught throughout each grade level. She's also helped establish some benchmark testing so that we can get some snapshots of students throughout the school year and get some data collected at 2 additional points in the school year so that teachers, again, just have a chance to check in, see are students making progress, are they where they should be at this point in the school year for this grade level, and just additional data for them to use. And also for parent feedback as well. Is my child on level? Are they below, above? So just additional data for the math side. The next goal, I'm going to move on to our...
Could I ask
Yep.
a question right there? You might think this is crazy, but I noticed this last year, having a first grader in the house. Could you explain to me, or not, I don't want to put you on the spot. They had... I don't know, I thought this was a little crazy, but I wasn't sure why we were doing it. Why would first graders have timed math tests?
One of the Trailblazers program that we use is a wonderful program. It's a very language-based program, a very problem-solving, hands-on kinds of program, and it's wonderful in those areas. One of the weaknesses of the program was that it didn't focus on facts, math facts, and multiplication tables, and knowing your addition things without having to count on fingers and having them right at hand. So we supplement the Trailblazers with those math fact challenge, just to get those remote, so they're rote, they're automatic. You know that 6 + 5 is 11. You don't have to think. You just know it. So that's just a supplemental thing because it was a weakness in the Trailblazers program. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We start in first grade time test.
Yeah. And the time piece, I know sometimes that can cause anxiety for a lot of kids, too. I mean, it's clear on
A
that.
little bit of anxiety.
Right,
Yeah.
definitely. But the idea is that we're trying to get these to become very rote with them. We've been doing this, Ms. Kane, for quite a while, and we've been collecting the data over the years of the results of the math challenge. And because it really is where we're asking for a lot of support from the homes, because basically it's not part of the Trailblazers program. So it's really helpful that the information is sent and home is helping the students to work on those nightly. I can't tell you, we really have most of the students now up in the high 80 percentiles of passing the Math Facts Challenge. And it really gets because, we find that some of our kids, because in certain grades, obviously, first as addition and some subtraction, but some of them even go beyond. And we had to take a look at the program and adjust it so that we could make sure we keep on challenge some of these kids. So we take an opportunity to recognize when these kids pass it. We recognize improvement in students, but we really have seen incredible results because research was showing that these kids, as much as we were trying to think with the higher critical thinking skills, problem solving, when it came to really rote types of basic facts, they didn't have that information. And so this has really well supplemented our math program.
Excellent. I knew you'd have a great answer. Thank you.
The next goal, it's similar to what you're hearing at other schools, I'm sure. The focus this year really is on the anti-bullying because of the new legislation. Mrs. Benton, as you know, at the beginning of the school year had the professional development for all teachers, all staff, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, custodians, so that we all got the same message about what the new law requires us to do. Christine McMinimum and her committee has done a great job establishing consistent forms and a flow chart that we follow whenever there's a suspected case of bullying. So we're all following those procedures at all the schools in addition to the Woburn Street and the Shawshene. And so we've put that into place this year. We will have the Keene family is going to be coming to the schools to present an anti-bullying program through their karate academy. Our enrichment teams at both schools have worked together to come up with a PAC is going to provide us with an enrichment program in January. We'll have people coming through to, again, another anti-bullying. So just to get that message, to have that become part of the school vocabulary, the kids are aware, parents are aware. So working with the superintendent, working with the district initiatives, we'll continue to do that as well.
Okay, and the last goal is basically just for Shawshene Elementary School, helping us again to have the aggregate meet the MCAS 2011 improvement target. And I have to say that the staff, under the leadership and guidance of our elementary literacy coordinator, Jerry LaPointe, have really put their heart and soul into taking a look at what may be going on that's impacting our reading, language, art goals. And we've been doing a lot of, continue again, analyzing the data. We've been using data warehouse provided by DESE. We have actually gone through a whole staff. What we've done is dedicated staff time to do one or two things, either meeting as a whole staff to discuss this issue, to review reading program, and then every other month we're breaking out into small individual grade level groups or specialty groups, then with the information we received from our prior staff meeting, implementing that and trying to see what our real needs are and how we're going to get those addressed. So it really, I have to say that the teachers have really been doing a lot of reflection on their instruction. The teachers have all along been doing a great job, but something seems to be just not there, and they keep on asking themselves, what else can we continue to do to help these students realize and make the progress that they need to do? We were able, through the assistance of the elementary literacy coordinator and Mr. Fredette, we put together a needs survey so that we could, with the teachers. So again, we're taking a look at that information, and we're going to be reviewing the results with our staff. We've been sitting down and talking and reviewing the service delivery that is being completed by our reading specialists, seeing if there's a different way, a better way that maybe we need to be providing services to those kids who might be at risk. We will continue to do, as we have now for the past 3 years, have the after-school assistance program in test-taking strategies that's going to be offered to all third grade students. But now we're exploring the opportunity of maybe mirroring a similar program that's happening over Woburn Street, where we offer those students who are at risk in reading a reinforcement or remedial program maybe before school. And so we're taking a look at that, and I think through the support of Mrs. Benton, that's something we're going to be able to offer those children as well, too. We will continue, again, because we found the data so rich through the administration of the Gates McGinnity in grades 1 and 2. It really has helped us in the early detection of students who are at risk and those who may not be receiving intervention, to see at what tier we can maybe provide intervention for them to help them to make effective progress. And again, we really seem to think that one of the areas that we seem to be having some difficulty is in the area of comprehension, reading comprehension. So we're investigating all the data related to that and see what changes will be necessary to help us meet that target. I want to thank also our data team, who last year and this year is continuing. They really are the impetus that has been doing a lot of this analysis of the data, and then bringing it to the full staff, who then we give the homework of trying to do the work. So we're doing this clearly as a team.
That's great. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Marchese?
Yes, gentlemen, in any town when you have sister schools and the administrators are working together, I think it's great for this type of collaboration. Now, you keep talking about data and data and data, and you're looking at it different ways and you're slicing and dicing it. Are you actually taking the data from individual schools and comparing them against each other and breaking it down to certain subgroups between the teachers and what each teacher is doing in a school, and then matching those up against different schools, and then seeing, what teacher's doing something differently, if the scores are different between classes? How is that really looked at? Or are you just looking at the individual and other subgroups?
We haven't gone that far as to really break it down that far. What we have done initially now is compare, when we did the baseline testing through the RTI process, the results of both sides of town. And we found that they are very comparable in the results. So I think one of the steps we've talked about, just what you brought up, Mr. Marchese, was the fact that we want to break it down, probably, again, looking, classroom by classroom too, and taking a look at that situation.
Yeah,
so.
because as you said, the teachers just haven't found, what the problem is, or with that situation. Maybe one teacher has a different style of teaching, or is doing something differently in the classroom. So again, I haven't seen the data myself, and everyone keeps talking about data. Data is only good based on how you interpret it. Exactly. And anybody can interpret data in the way they want, so I'm just curious for that
Mr. LaPointe has the opportunity, obviously, of seeing both sides of town, and his initial observation says that from him being in all the different classrooms, nothing stands out. There's nothing striking that is being done differently in any of the classrooms on both sides of town. So I think it is going to take a lot more scratching, a lot more going a little deeper to actually try to figure out exactly where, if there is any difference in what they are.
Okay.
Mr. Hayes?
And I'm basically going to say ditto to what I said earlier. I think it's great that you're focusing on making data-driven decisions to improve reading scores, math scores, and MCAS scores, and also you have a commitment to anti-bullying and creating a safe and secure school environment. And I think your goals, objectives, and activities are just right on. So congratulations and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Now we're moving up to the intermediate schools, the north and the west. And as Frank Ferrio and Dennis Shaw come up, you know, one of the difficulties with analyzing data and following students is the structure of the Wilmington Public Schools. We lose a lot in our, with MCAS being first administered in third grade. Those students have already gone on to another building, a new group teachers, a new setting, so you don't have the conversation, the traditional K-5 setup where teachers get to know the students for 6 years and really get to understand the families and able to have that support. And I find that to be something that hurts us in Wilmington. We were actually at a conference a few months ago, and Dennis and Frank and I were looking to find other school communities that had the model we have. And I think there's only one that we could locate in Massachusetts, because we want to meet with them, because they're running into the same issues we are as well, to see if there's, you know, if we can get some thoughts from them. But, excuse me. I just want to also add something to, in response to Mr. Marchese's question. What we have received this year, which is the first time, is a growth model for all students. So every parent gets to see the growth that their child's making. That's the data that's, to me, is even more important than looking at whole classroom worth of data, because I'm really pushing everyone to look at each individual student and make sure each individual student is showing growth in all the different areas. And you can clearly see in the growth pattern, it could be comprehension, it could be open-ended response. That's where we're identifying what those areas are and then remediating. So we're getting to look at different data. But that being said, I'm going to turn it over to the fourth and fifth grade.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. It was Norton and Natick.
That's right.
Found another one that have the same configuration as us.
Grades 4 and 5.
Yeah, grade 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to start off also by recognizing the members of our school council. They are Paula Mirabella, who's a parent, Sally Lojak, a teacher, Glenn Turner, a parent, Paula Baker is a parent, Robin Drury, a teacher, Kelly Cushing, a teacher, and Phyllis Green, a teacher. Again, our two councils work very closely together, so there's a mix of people from each side of town in that committee.
Thank you. I'll start off with our English language arts goals. You'll see that our goals, as they have been for several years now, are rooted in just getting more children to be more successful in the MCAS test. It's the one place that we have that we can get concrete data from and work towards. So in our plan at the North and West, we, again, like, you know, analyzing data, using that to help us identify students that need extra support, and areas of the curriculum that are traditionally showing up as weak for us, and we can show improvement. We've done a couple of things differently this year. We're studying a couple of things this year. We are working on leveling books in our libraries with the Fountas and Pinnell system, which is going to be a great advantage to us, because that's coupled with the fact that we are now administering the Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment in each building to the at-need, at-risk students that we have, so we can concretely identify the levels they're on and start specific instruction to them on their levels, and we can measure that like 3 times over the course of the year, which will give us very specific data on specific children as they progress. We also have book clubs now in both schools. We have book clubs at the North and book clubs at the West. I know, Mrs. Ken, that's something you would always hope for, was the book clubs. And we also are working, or I should say Mr. LaPointe is working closely with us, because he has the ability to be mobile across town to look at different classrooms, different teachers, different things that are being done in classrooms, and then meet with Frank and I and our staffs to talk about, here's what I see over there, here's what I see over here, here's what seems to be working, let's try this, let's try that. So we're just kind of embarking on that right now, because there are, when you look at that DOT report, there are so many similarities in our buildings that it's hard to say, like, you know, why is one more successful than the other in one area or another area. So we're just trying to dig as deep as we can to find information that might be there, but we just haven't seen it yet to get to. Excuse me, and let's see, also, so we are also still using, you know, the Hope Niffle now, you know, the whole level reader system that we have, which provides us a lot of information and supportive materials for both above level students, on level students, and below level students for ELA. And that's about it.
Now, our second goal is addressing math, and as was mentioned earlier, we at the North did not achieve our math goals this year. And as Mr. Apolloni was saying, my staff has responded very positively to this challenge, and I've really put it out as a challenge to them that we don't want that to happen another year. And we've worked extremely hard on data analysis. There's that word again, Mr. Marchese. Identifying where the specific needs are, and we've created several things that are already in the works to address this. We've got an after-school program that's already begun utilizing the Renzulli program, which is really targeting the kids that are probably most at risk. The Renzulli program allows us to differentiate to a degree that we can literally have those 18 students for 45 minutes looking at activities that directly address their specific needs as outlined in that data that we've discerned. So that's already going on. Very shortly we'll be starting another program which is going to be a before and after school program. It's going to have a before or after option for parents using the Study Island program, which is going to be addressing that next tier, the needs improvement group. And again, Study Island allows us to focus in on the specific needs of students. So each student will be looking at something different based on what the data tells us is their specific needs. So that one's going to be rolling shortly. The other thing we've started this year is the Math Olympiad, which I'm excited about because it's offering a challenge activity for our high-end students. And that's just gotten off the ground, and I actually sat in and observed that yesterday. Very, very exciting. They were doing math problems in there that I couldn't answer. They were answering the questions faster than the teacher could ask them. So we're really excited that we're offering something for just about everybody. We're really focusing our enrichment activities through the PAC on two areas, the anti-bullying and mathematics. And we've already had the human calculator here. I'm not sure if people are aware of that. That was very, very exciting. If you haven't seen him, he's worth seeing. He's been on Oprah. He's been on the national news. He was leaving here and heading for Oprah's school in Africa. That's where he was leaving. So we were really fortunate to get him here. And he got the kids all excited about participating in the American Math Challenge, which our students have been doing for the last 2 days. Another really exciting challenge activity. And we were talking about the Math Facts Challenge earlier, and I kept thinking, wow, as I was watching them, if we hadn't done that Math Facts Challenge since the first grade, they couldn't have done this. They were zipping through it. Boom. What it does, it would show them math problems, and they would have to answer as quickly as they can, and they're competing against children all over the country. And it's sort of like, you know, they'll have 3 children listed below them, and the bar graph goes over as they answer the questions. It's like the horse race at the carnival. And I was amazed how fast they were working. We gather points as a school. Really, really exciting. It's going on till 11 o'clock at night. I think there's a lot of children at home still working on it right now to see how many points we can gather. So that's really exciting. We also have the arithmeticals program coming back again. Yeah, we had them before. They're coming back in, I believe, in January. So we have lots of enrichment activities focused on math that we're really excited about. We continue with our Math Word of the Week program, which has been really helpful. Basically, Mrs. Buscemi has identified vocabulary in the MCAS where our children continually seem to struggle. As we analyze these specific questions, we realize that there's some vocabulary that maybe they're not quite getting. So each week, we get on the intercom and we announce a particular math word, and we bring it up every single day and give them different contexts, and they get a little quiz at the end of the week on it. We're going to be implementing the recommendations of the Math Vertical Team, which has now been working hard regarding curriculum content and pacing. We implemented some targeted interventions similar to the RTI model that they were speaking of earlier. Mrs. Buscemi's role has sort of changed a little bit within our schools. She really has been working closely with the teachers to sort of, identify those kids that may be struggling. So her time is now being spent specifically addressing those kids. At the end of a unit where the teacher says, well, these 3 or 4 children I think were struggling with the unit we just did. She's then going in and spending time with those particular kids to try to bring them, to catch them up with the class. So that's kind of exciting. And lastly, Mrs. Buscemi has actually just announced a Help Your Child with Math program for parents. The first meeting that she's doing is going to be on November 3rd, where she's going to be talking about the Trailblazer curriculum. I hear it a lot from parents. I want to help my child, but I just can't. I don't know how to do it. So she's going to be working on that with parents. So hopefully that will be helpful so then they can help their students more at home.
Before we go to the social goal, I want to just add that the Renzulli program and Study Island programs are both also working in the ELA areas also. They're not strictly for math. As a matter of fact, this past Monday night at the middle school, we had our first parent training for the Renzulli program. We had about 20 parents there with Mr. Ferrio, myself, Mrs. Ippolito, and Mr. Ellis, showing the parents what Renzulli looks like. How, they got on assignment so they could log in as a student and see what it looks like so they can now talk to the kids about it. So the program is expanding as we go forward.
Can I just add, this program was, the intention of this program was to allow our bright students to be able to move as far as they can in curriculum of interest to them. It's a program that can be accessed from home, from the library. It's a all-year-round program. They can take virtual field trips. They can do research. They can visit different museums. And we're really encouraging all the 4th and 5th grade parents to get involved with their children with this program.
Nice, that sounds terrific. Dr. Quick.
Question. When, all these activities that you have chosen look wonderful. My question is when, in regards to children not doing as well as you would like to on the MCAS scoring, do you look to see what other districts who have excelled in these areas, let's say, do for their activities? Is that where you're getting these, do you look towards other towns that have done better in certain areas where we might be, I don't want to say, failing, but not doing as well as we would like to be?
Sure. I think to answer that, maybe less at other towns, but at programs that would help us, like in larger ways. Okay, we have we're struggling in getting main idea across. For some reason, main idea, like we're not doing as well as we feel we should. What programs or what's out there that we can see? Now, if we find something that looks good, what we'll do is see if we can find another system that uses it. And talk to someone in that system and say, listen, can we come out and take a look at this? Or what's your experience with this? That's how we got Study Island. That's how we got Renzulli. These things, kind of came to us because we didn't invent them. We heard about them. You do some homework on it. You investigate it. So does that answer the question that way?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, not knowing. I mean, do you have these lists of these, these great courses that you can possibly take, and you just say, well, let's try this one, or, that you did answer it. I'm just trying to figure out how you pick and choose these types of things to enhance the learning.
I also work in my role in a curriculum. I belong to a collaborative, and every month we share best practices, and that's a topic at all the meetings. So, for example, Winchester traditionally scores high in math every year in MCAS, and they'll do a presentation on what they're using. They happen to be using the exact same curriculum we're using, which makes me happy. So that's good. But some of the things like double dosing, giving extra support, those come from other best practices from school systems that are doing really well.
Okay.
So we do look at other school systems for ideas.
Thank you.
I can say that Winchester contacted us about Renzulli.
Yeah.
I love that.
And Bedford and Burlington.
Oh, really?
They've asked me to go out and present.
Nice, excellent. Mr. Marchese?
Just a quick question, Mr. Ferry. You mentioned these before and after-school programs. Are these fee-based, or are they no cost to the students?
No cost to the students.
Okay, no. Okay, no. And my son's probably going to kill me when I say this, but I volunteer him for the Math Olympiad, so I think it'd be good for him.
All right, we'll get him in.
Absolutely.
What about the math workshop for parents, Mr. Marchese?
So I think I'm good there.
Our third goal is providing a balanced, comprehensive curriculum, and within that, to positively affect the social growth and development of all students. This year, again, the big push, anti-bullying, but we also are very careful that everything we do isn't anti-bullying. It's also the social growth of students, putting up, positive role models in front of them. We do have the Second Step program that's been kind of, it's come down from the middle school to grades 4 and grade 5. It's taught in the classrooms directly by the classroom teachers to their students. It's like about a half-an-hour lesson when it occurs. It's a wonderful interactive lesson when you watch it take place. We also, I think, Mr. Sanderson mentioned the Karate Academy. They've already made it through the West doing their presentations. It's an anti-bullying presentation. I think Mrs. Benton had the book. She was holding up the book there.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It was a very good, age-appropriate presentation. They were talking to the kids directly, giving them just like real-world scenarios and just like real-world ways, not to fix everything, but just how to, how to get yourself out of a situation, And what I was very impressed with as far as that particular thing goes, they focused a lot on talking to the kids about the difference in tattling and being safe. And I thought that was a huge thing for students, the age of the children that we deal with. Kids are afraid of tattling, but they made a distinct difference between tattling and doing the right thing and telling an adult. So it was a very good program as far as that goes. We also both have student councils that we work with closely, on decisions within the school that they can impact. We also have different enrichment activities. You mentioned the arithmeticals. We have enrichment activities. I think Ooch World is the latest one that the PAC has brought to us. Our PACs, I have to say, are both very active. They go out and they scout shows. They look at shows in other districts to see what they look like, to see if they're appropriate for us. They bring them back to us. We can take a look at it, and then we go forward with it. These are, they're anti-bullying / social growth. So it's not just what's negative stuff. It's positive stuff also. And another neat thing that Mr. Ferry and I both do for student recognition, we both have walls of fame in our buildings that we post student work to on a regular basis, and then we take a picture of the kids. We usually post it on the website, and the picture's there so the parents can see it and stuff like that. And we leave the work up for a couple of weeks so parents can come in and check it out when they have an opportunity to. So those are things we're doing for to promote the social growth of the students in the buildings.
Very nice, thank you. Mr. Marchese?
Just one question, just for parents to get involved in this Renzulli program, and kids get to, I guess, do all this virtual stuff, how do parents get involved if they haven't already learned about it? Because this, honestly, is the first I've heard of it, so I'm intrigued. This is great.
It's a great question, and it's possibly, you may not have right yet, because right now the big push is getting the Study Island program out and running to the students, because Study Island will shift into being a homework-based program. Then Renzulli will kind of take this over, but we can get information out to you with the Renzulli. There's like a parent letter that will come home very shortly that will have information about that. We may even do like another parent night if that's the case, if we get like enough feedback on that to involve people in that.
That parent night was for
Renzulli.
grades.
4 and 5.
Right, we did an alert now message out, and we
Right.
sent information home to all the families to invite them to participate in the workshop, and we had about 25 parents showed up the other night for it, and we're thrilled,
It was
excited
excellent.
for it.
It was excellent. It was excellent. Was there another question?
Mr. Hayes?
A question and two comments. My question would be, in both the math and the English under activities, you mentioned something along the lines of, based on the results of unit assessments, students will be regrouped for additional math instruction and targeted areas of need. So when you regroup these students, are the teachers conscious of the fact that, students may feel like there's some sort of stigma attached to being in a certain group, instead of being with the Blue Jays, you're with the Red Robins or something along those lines?
Sure. It's a very good question. This is happening on a small scale, on a pilot basis. And what it really is it's classrooms that work together anyway. So the regrouping of the students that's taking place, it takes place already for different reasons. They might switch off for science and social studies and things like that. So they're still being with the teacher that serviced them. They're just going to see them for a small chunk of time for targeted instruction based on what we've determined to be an area where they need some extra support after taking a particular exam. This is like a small, quick hit kind of thing. It isn't like taking, Johnny and sending him, 2 floors down the hall to somebody he's never seen before for reasons he doesn't know. It's taking place within the teams of teachers that already work together.
Right.
Does that help?
No, definitely, definitely. And so 2 comments. I think it's great to see the after-school clubs, and not just for those students that are sort of, in need, but also the students that scored, advanced proficient, proficient or advanced in math and language arts. It's great that we're not sort of ignoring the higher performing students at the, so that's great. And the other thing I would say is, I'm not a former teacher and I don't have students in the school system, but having been a student for 21 years of my life and a recent grad school graduate, I do know a few things, I think anyway. And one of the things I do know is that teaching and learning should be fun. And I think, particularly with your math and your reading enrichment programs, they certainly sound like a lot of fun. So just wanted to acknowledge that. And again, activities, goals, specific objectives, they all sound great to me. So congratulations and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
I would invite you to come in and actually see the children doing Renzulli sometime
That
and
would
watch
be
how much
great.
fun they're having. They absolutely love it.
Well, I was at the Technology Task Force meeting, and I think it might have been you who made the comment that, that after having done it, 87 fourth graders emailed their teachers saying how much they enjoyed it. So I totally get it. And one day I would like to come in and see it, sure.
You're welcome to.
That's great. Yes, Mrs.
Been on
Carroll?
it, and he loves it. Both of them, I had two of them go through it, and they both love it, and I have to sit there in the computer with them and do all the activities, and it's a great program, really is. Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
good to hear. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Now, the middle school. Christine McMillan. Hope and Terry here? Oh, Hope and Terry here?
No, they-
Okay, I couldn't see. Oh, they're at the dance, that's right.
Just finished up.
They chose the
Dancing time, yeah.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here tonight. I would like to take a moment to thank the members of our school council at the middle school who had some input into the school improvement plan. And, of course, our assistant principals, Hope Doran and Terrence Sheehan. And we have a smattering of teachers from different areas in the building. Rosangela Ferrula in the foreign language department, Jennifer Judkins from science, Nate Melbourne from math, and Taylor Rye from social studies. And our parent representatives, a thank you to Michelle Artizzoni and Christine Bloom and Mia Brown. So we have a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade parent representative on our school council. With regard to our curriculum, we really want to focus on putting all of our documents together in one place where they are easily accessible for all teachers. They are working documents, and sometimes they are modified and we shift things. So we are going to be working alongside the high school to sort of encompass 6 through 12, and working either with a software such as Curriculum Mapper or Curricuplan to have everything systematic and formatted in the same way. So teachers, CTLs, principals, assistant principals, and in the long run, parents would be able to easily find where the standards are covered across the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So that's one of our goals with regard to curriculum. With regard to student achievement and our learning results, as we mentioned earlier, with our adequate yearly progress status, we are certainly working on both math and English language arts, and talking about using the data that we continue to talk about of our student scores, and really taking some time to evaluate the remediation programs that we have in place. Right now we have a math workshop program that's offered by semester, and we also have our math tutorials that happen in the spring, 10 weeks leading up to the testing. So we really want to take a look at our data, and are those programs effective? Also, with regard to writing, we really want to focus on strengthening our writing skills, and so we are going to provide more frequent opportunities for writing across the curriculum. We're using math journals to express our thoughts on how we came to solutions. We have health classes where they're writing guided imageries with regard to where they would spend time relaxing to help with their stress management, and they have a rubric that will measure and give them a grade, that they know what they're searching for in their grade. We are hoping to implement some writing prompts at each interval of each quarter, so the students will have some practice getting ready for our writing. And we will continue our teacher training with our 6 Traits Plus 1 curriculum with regard to the writing. Not only have many of our English teachers been trained, some of our special education teachers, and now we would like to branch out this year to have even our social studies, science, and math teachers really trained along the same lines with writing. So they're using the same jargon, they're using the same words such as word choice, presentation, and voice. And that way, all of the kids will be hearing the same message across all content areas. With regard to the question earlier about corrective action, last year in mathematics, we were provided technical assistance by the district, and we were able to bring in some expert support with regard to our implementation of impact math into some of our substantially separate math programs. And so many of our special education teachers and some of our newer math teachers were trained, and that's one of the viable options for corrective action, is some technical assistance from the district. This year, we are restructuring that program so that we do have the co-teacher, as was mentioned earlier, a licensed mathematics teacher, alongside a special education teacher, working with some of our students, many of our students who are in the warning category, who are in some substantially separate classrooms. So that restructuring model, or restructuring a part of the school day, is a mode for corrective action. So obviously, we have a lot of work to do. As some people saw in our goals, we made the mark in our 8th grade. We went up where we were supposed to go up, and we went down where we were supposed to go down. And we just need to work on consistently doing that across all 3 grade levels for more than 2 years in a row. And that's really one of the points with regard to AYP. Our last goal has to do with our school climate, and many people have been talking about the anti-bullying. Obviously, we have been somewhat ahead of the curve with regard to our curriculum adoption. Going back about 5 years ago, the Second Step program, with the help of Laura Stinson, came on board at the middle school, and we started in small steps. Some mini trainings with the teachers to become familiar, then the whole staff was trained, then we implemented 1 level, and now we're implementing level 3 in the 8th grade. So all grade levels are working on problem solving, anger management lessons, conflict resolution, recognizing the problem, seeing someone else's perspective, and those are across all 3 grade levels, and we've built time into the school year to do that. And obviously, we are going to be participating in what we hope will be a very successful Random Act of Kindness Week in January, which is sort of statewide. And we hope to have some of our enrichment programs focused in on that week as well as throughout the year. We have something scheduled already for some 8th graders, for all of our 8th graders, and I believe some 9th graders. It's a multimedia presentation with lots of vignettes about goal setting, stepping up and being a leader in your school, standing up in the face of peer pressure for perhaps against a bully, or being an upstander instead of a bystander. And that's coming in January, I believe the 25th, and it's called Balance of Power. So all of our 8th graders will see that. We would like to continue this year as well with the traditional Academy of Karate and have that be sort of a stepping stone into the building with our 6th graders. Our feedback last year from parents and students, the word that we heard a lot was confidence. And when they participated in some team building activities, they came home and they talked to their parents and they felt confident. And that's one of our core values, and I think helps along the lines of knowing what to do in a situation, as one of the other principals said, in the face of bullying. And we are starting a new student recognition program this year with our core values postcards. Students designed these in a contest last year, and so now we have some printed postcards that will go home to parents when their child is recognized or is caught being good or representing one of our core values. And so the teachers have been clamoring for the postcards, and they're going to go home when a student is seen helping a younger child picking up their books that might have fallen on the floor. I had a young man who stepped up on a bus and told a bully to stop and to knock it off and to leave a kid alone. Those are the types of kids that we want to be recognizing in our school, and we hope that those postcards, they're sitting in my office. We're getting ready to mail a few home. We have our first round.
Very nice. That was it, okay. Mr. Marchese.
Mrs. McMillan, have you heard tonight, I'm totally data-driven and love to hear about the numbers. Now, have you seen a significant difference between the 5th graders and the 6th graders in terms of some of the numbers and how kids changing developmentally in the different structure of the middle school? Are they accepting it better, or is, in terms of testing and all of that? And
Actually, we were talking about this the other day with Mrs. Benton. Some of our strongest growth is in the 6th grade. We talked about that growth percentile this year. Although they might have not met the mark as a whole group, or maybe even some of the subgroups, in general, the 6th grade shows the biggest growth. So you can tell that they're ready to absorb a lot of the information that's coming at them, and their minds developmentally are ready to move from the concrete to the abstract. So we are seeing a lot of growth for our 6th graders. Is it a transition? Absolutely. Did we have a few tears those first 2 weeks of school because I can't find my locker, I got lost on the 3rd floor? Those are the types of things that happen at the middle school level, but academically, they seem to be transitioning very strongly.
And that's because we have very strong intermediate schools.
They get them ready.
All right, excellent, thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. Any other questions? Mrs. Carroll?
I just want to say that I'm so glad to hear that the bullying has gone through from the elementary right up. I mean, I did do the stage 2, and I think every school should do that. It was great. I mean, I loved just seeing that. And
team building, the activities.
yeah, what I observed. Yeah,
Yep.
it was very nice. And that my son did get recommended for a math program for the middle school. And I was glad to see that too, because that the teachers actually said, well, this kid needs help. So to bring that on to the middle school, that, you know, to make sure he gets help so he doesn't, you know, fall behind. So, you know, I'm glad to see that everything is working good.
Thanks.
Excellent. Yeah. Mr. Hayes?
Yeah, you know, obviously 2 thumbs up for me, and I want to ask a question actually that was asked by a couple different members at the last school committee meeting, and that was part of the reason why our MCAS scores were a little down at the middle school was because you know, it was a small number of students didn't complete or fill out the exam. And, you know, why and what can you do about that? What are you going to do about that?
Right, I think that, you know, we definitely saw a few more kids this year than any other year, either at the end of a long session, they may have faded, and the last 5 questions, or maybe the last passage was difficult and they didn't understand it very well. We saw perhaps like 5 questions in a row not answered. We saw maybe 2 questions not answered in the middle. Maybe that was a difficult question, whether it was math or English language arts or science for that matter. So we plan to, you know, talk to the students and ask them, you know, did you tire out? Were you spent? It's a long deal. We also are going to take a look at how we organize our sessions this year, and we're going to make sure that we only are testing 1 session per grade per day. It elongates the testing period, but it is a little bit better for the students because they can remain focused for an hour and a half to 2 hours, as opposed to 2 hours, taking a break, and then completing session 2. So we're going to refocus on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good sense. Any other questions or comments? No? Great.
Now the high school.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McMillan.
I'd also like to acknowledge in the corner over there, Dennis Mahoney, Assistant Principal at the high school.
Hello, Mr. Mahoney, welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would also like to thank the members of our school council, parents, Sheila Burke, Chris Diorio, Ginny Barnish, Ellen Klein, Medora Miller, and Linda Schifo, teachers Brenda Marcoux and Linda Peters, and students Kellen Campbell and Jessica Burke. Our first goal, as you saw earlier, is to address the recommendations of the NEAS&C report, visiting team report. This is kind of a broad goal because there are over 30 questions, 30 recommendations that have to be addressed between now and the 2-year report that we have to submit, and also the 5-year report. So you will see this again and again over the next probably 2.5 school years before we submit an actual 2-year report to the accrediting agency. That basically outlines goals and recommendations that we've addressed, and goals, recommendations that we're working on, and goals and recommendations that we have changed. We have to report any changes within the building, facility, personnel, students, anything along the way that happens. So there's a lot that will still need to be done with this, and the steering committee has begun to organize a survey for the staff to prioritize each of the recommendations.
Good, sorry, Mr. Marchese. I was wondering why you were looking at me like that. He's like giving me the look. The principal look. Thank you, Mr. Marchese. Thank you.
Just to reaffirm, Mr. Tracy, all the recommendations from the NEASC report, there are no surprises in there. This is stuff that we already kind of knew about. It wasn't like, oh, we didn't catch that. We already knew all this stuff that came up. So again, so people out there know this is stuff that we've been working on and working towards the fix.
Absolutely, and if you read the pre-reports that the teachers and actually the whole high school staff submitted to the accrediting agency beforehand. Just about everything was in those reports, so they were not new, but there are some things we know we have to work on now, and some things we know we can hang on until we get maybe the building process going or something like that. So.
Okay.
Second goal is the 5-year plan, which helped us to get to the point of completing all of our issues related to the accreditation. Has expired, and this year I shifted gears a little bit and asked the CTLs, the liaisons, and other supervisors to work with the staff to come up with the goals for the 5-year plan. The parameters that I put on the group they have to be centered around curriculum, instruction, and assessment. It's my feeling and philosophy that if we get those 3 areas right, the other things will fall into place. We've been very successful following the 5-year plan that we have. We've been able to keep it dynamic, if you will, and be able to grow some exceptional programs, increase our staff, give more programs and opportunities to our kids, professional development opportunities to our staff. So it's really been a nice foundation for getting us to the point of getting through the accreditation process. Now, to take the bulk of the recommendation from the accreditation process, along with the requirements of the 5-year plan, and to allow all of the stakeholders to jump in, will certainly lay the foundation for the next 5 years, which will get us to the final piece of answering all of the recommendations of this current report.
I'll just make a comment on that. I can't tell you how I feel to hear you mention that curriculum assessment and instruction, because I totally agree with you that that is the core of what we're about and what we're doing. And that's really strong to me. That's a strong plan to be working on the 5-year plan on those areas. And to have it come out of the accreditation report, it's just like this perfect opportunity. All the stars are in alignment right here. So thank you. That's great.
The final goal, and we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. Mr. Hayes a little nervous, but we've laid assurances on the table. But we really want to take a look at the high school library in comparison with the future, and the future of technology, Web 2.0 tools, future of education. We want to look at how curriculum, instruction, and assessment drives what your library looks like, what experiences your kids have and your teachers have, and what opportunities they have available to them within this structure to be able to be successful and be successful at the pace that kids are used to. It's like I had said last time, many of these books you can pull off the shelf. They haven't been taken out, withdrawn, or signed out since the 70s. But the reality is a lot of these books and many of the classics with sites like Google and the Gutenberg Project and other sites that are making all of these books available, they're all available electronically now. In fact, many of the classics you can get for free electronically. So our drive is to be able to supplement what we're doing, and just use, for example, the English department. One of their budget requests this season coming up was to get 50 copies of Othello. A quick search on Google gives us an electronic version free, wide open use for everybody, and it can be stored on a computer, passed around to kids, given to adults. So that's kind of the model I think you'll see come along the way. We're going to meet with people to talk about Nooks and Kindles and being able to manage that for kids in one place and make it easier for them to utilize the information based on whatever class they're taking. Also for themselves. There are a lot of kids that read for pleasure still. There are a lot of kids that enjoy picking up a book for the fun of it. As much as people may not want to believe that, we had an author come in a couple weeks ago, and the kids were enamored by having an author in the room, being able to ask questions about a book that they read, and get some real insight. So I think those are the things that we need to do to encourage kids to continue to do things like that and continue to look towards what's available.
Great, thank you. Mr. Marchese?
Mr. Tracy, with the town library literally right next door to the high school, has there been any thought to collaborating with the town library and redeveloping your library, maybe sharing some resources, or come up with some ideas and what you're thinking?
That's certainly one of the ideas that was on the table a little earlier in the year. once the groups get formed to gather the information, that will be on the table. And certainly, you know, at the high school level, I could take a 25 and 30 and 50 kids for the walk down the street to be able to access all of those books and resources that they have available, and in many cases, things that we don't have. So I think it's beneficial to us to lean on all of the areas within the community that are available to us, but also to kind of not give up that fight. You know, I'm a book guy and collect old books, and really, you know, it's hard to let that go, but I'm also one that has to be able to push into the future and understand where kids are at. The kids can, you know, literally in their pocket have all their books on their iPhones and on their Nooks and things like that. So I think it's going to be a hybridization, if you will, of what you see in the public library, what you see here, and the things that are available on the web.
We were meeting with Stuart Lesser, Jocelyn Lesser for the Operations Program Manager for the high school site the other day, and I was telling him about what we're up to, and he was very excited and had a list of schools. Cambridge just did this, and they're working with their public library, so I have some places for you to go visit as well, and he'd love to hear how we do. He said he thought it was a great opportunity for us in getting ready for looking at what comes next.
Sure. And again, the stars are aligned. You have the accreditation process, you have the 5-year plan, you have the possible building process looking us in the face, staring us in the face. All the things are there to drive this, to make it very successful, and to be a model for other schools.
Excellent. And Mr. Hayes?
Well, you know, as a public librarian, it's very nice to see this actually as one of your 3 school improvement plan goals for this year, the beginning of the process, because I know, as you said, the accreditation report had like 30 suggestions, and of all the suggestions, for you to pull out this one and make it, you know, arguably one of your top priorities, I think is wonderful. And I did, it wasn't lost on me that it was the last page in the booklet. You were saving the best for last. So I want to thank you very much, and I look for. You know, you referenced that I was a little nervous at the meeting last time when we were talking about the state of the current high school library, and I would say that's accurate. But I am also excited because I have faith in you and Superintendent Benton. That you know, we're really going to transform this place into something special. So, so thank you very much.
And if you look at it from the perspective of the direction you're talking, we have that opportunity to go back and support curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and bring in all of the up-to-date ways to do it.
I'd just like to mention that with Mr. Mahoney being present, that's nice to see you, but if anyone wants to know more about Mr. Mahoney, there's a fantastic article by Bobby Dole, Wilmington High School welcomes Mr. Mahoney in the Wildcat News, and I thought it was a very nice article. I hope you did too. But, so we're very lucky to have you from this article. Thank you.
Excellent portrait, too.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can recognize him. Did you draw that, Mr. Tracy?
No.
Oh.
I don't have that much skill.
I will also say on a lighter note that you definitely get style points for the presentation you presented earlier, and I do wish I knew how to do that when I was going through college and grad school. So.
That's excellent. Thank you. Anyone else? We all set? Okay, thank you, Mr. Tracy.
Thank you.
That was great. Wow, that was certainly a good overview of the coming year for the school system. Mr. Vail.
In my typical sort of heretical way, I'd like to actually, I think, use this opportunity to maybe engage in a discussion with my fellow committeemen, because all those presentations were really interesting, and there's a ton of detail, but I'm sitting there thinking, like, and this is sort of an existential question for me. It's like, what am I doing here? Because there's so much detail, and I wasn't sure what I should be doing with that information as a member of the committee, because I'm kind of, and I was taking a lot of notes. I was trying to get my own head around what I'm doing. So I'm sort of coming back to, and I don't know the answer to any of these questions, right? I mean, I'm sort of thinking about this, and it's like, well, are these the right goals? Are there too many goals? Are there too few? Like, what do you folks need from me to help you achieve these goals? You know, do you need more resources? Do you need policy changes? How do we know if you've achieved these goals? Are there clear benchmarks? I mean, these are the questions that I'm sort of left with after listening to all this and trying to figure out as a member of this committee what I should really be doing to help make sure we're all sort of pulling in the same direction and achieving what we need to be achieving in the time frame we want to be achieving it, with the money we have available. So that's I don't know what everyone else sort of thinks about our role and what we should be doing, and I thought I'd sort of ask that question because this seems like a good forum to have that discussion.
Right. Thank you. That's a good question. Does anyone want to? Mr. Hayes.
I'm not going to answer it completely, but I will say that in our policy manual, there is a page that talks about each school having to bring in front of us on an annual basis their school improvement plan. And I didn't bring my policy handbook, but I do recall that there's some sort of criteria that needs to be met within the plan. It does talk about, is it aligned with our strategic goals, which in this case, they are. Are the objectives measurable? I think in this case they are. It asked for them to specify any additional resources they need. In this case, there weren't dollar amounts, but they did say, what resources they're going to need to accomplish each specific activity. So, to your broader, I appreciate the question. I think it's a great question. I don't have all the answers, but I would recommend going back to the policy handbook and reading. There's a page or two on there about what we're supposed to be doing, and I did read it before going through the plan, and I forget exactly what it all said, but to me it felt like the plans had met the criteria that was established in our policy handbook. Unfortunately, I can't list off all of them for you, but.
Anyone else? Okay. A couple of things, Mr. Vail. First of all, the report, this is why we did the report of the individual schools earlier tonight, so that we could see that they had accomplished them, or in some cases, they're still working on it, so they let us know. Secondly, we have to vote on this. So at the next meeting, we heard them this time, that was our reading of it, and so we vote that these are acceptable the next time. And as Robert said, that's part of the policy, but it's also part of the state law that we have to do school improvement plans. They have to be okayed through the school committee. And there was another question you had that I had the answer right away, and then I forgot the question.
Well, I guess, and maybe this is a question for the superintendent.
Resources. And
well, how do we incentivize people? I'm sort of looking at all this, and I'm sort of thinking if I were head of a business or something, I'd want to provide some incentive for people to achieve these goals.
What comes next is our budget, that this is now, when we get the budget requests from the different schools, a part of their budget request will have to do with their school improvement, whatever monies they might need or resources they might need, that will be part of their budget presentation to us for the budget. So it's kind of an ongoing process that we're doing here. But would the superintendent like to?
Well, I think if you asked the principals if they have enough money to do all the things they want to do, they would not say they did. But under the fiscal constraints of what's going on, I think that we try to. I think what we try to do, Quincy, is shape our budget around what their goals are. And when Paul gave out the budget directions 2 weeks ago, there's 3 areas that, we asked them to think about where they want to utilize their funds and to keep in mind what their goals are from their school plans. I guess in my mind, because these all come from the bigger strategic plan of the system, in a way, we're making it easier for you as a school committee person, because we've tailored it so that everything fits into that plan, and the budget is built on those goals. I think that any principal would love, to have the, support of the school committee in the work that they do by, going to visit their school and seeing it in action, or helping participating in a fundraiser where they're raising money for one of the activities, things like that. I think what I would like to, challenge all of us to think about is maybe coming back next meeting when we vote on this to hear from all of you about what your hopes and dreams are for the students in all these schools. And does it feel like we're helping them achieve it through these goals?
And I think the other part is that's why we hire through the superintendent and hire our administrators, because they, along with the parent representatives and the teacher representatives of their school, they have all looked, they've reviewed what's going on in the school at this point. Where are we with regard to test scores? Where are we with regard to bullying? We know that is a system-wide, it's a statewide something, so we'd expect to have those in the plans. But they get together and look at the whole overview, which we couldn't possibly do, and present it to us, and they zero in on what the 3 most important points are. I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, there used to be a lot of goals. At one point, there were like 8 or 9 goals, and the school committee at that time said, this is crazy.
Too many.
Too many. So we basically asked to come back with like 3. We thought 3 was a good number, I think, on the superintendent's suggestion.
I think that, that you always raise thought-provoking questions, and I want to go back to this morning when I was sitting with Neil Ellis in a presentation at Newton Public Schools on the 21st century classroom. The foundation in Newton is helping fund their goal of making every classroom a 21st century classroom. This classroom has a smart board, a projector, portable pad, computers for netbooks for all the students, and the clickers. So I asked the presenter how much did it cost. $30,000 for each classroom. It's $4 million to do it in Newton, and to outfit every single classroom for 21st century. So Neil and I looked at each other and said, well, that's a pipe dream. That's never going to happen. So I said to him, well, it may not happen the same way as Newton's doing it, because this community certainly can't afford to give every classroom netbooks and all the equipment, but we can think about how we can achieve the same goal. And that's what I think we'd love your help with in thinking about how do we do that? How do we, 5 years from now, make every classroom a 21st century classroom? I'd love to have that conversation and help and support from all of you. I think the principals would agree. It's a conversation that needs to happen moving forward.
Just to add on to that, I have all these big questions, right? Because education is not my field of expertise, and I'm curious about this. But I need information on sort of what our benchmarks and what our competitors are kind of doing. I'm not sure that our competitors in China are fitting out their hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of classrooms with all of that technology. I don't know what they're doing in Norway or in Sweden, where they have the top education systems in the world and the highest achieving students. I'm just not sure that, it's nice to have all these doodads and technology. I just am not convinced, and maybe I could be convinced. I'm just not convinced that we need to have that to develop the skill set and the ability to work together and communicate for the 21st century. And it's those types of big questions where, I don't know, how long is the school day in other parts of the world? What are they doing? I just don't have the big picture, and I drill down and there's all this detail here, and I think it's interesting, but I don't know what to do with it.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's aligning with, where I think we need to be 5, 10, 20, 25, 30 years from now, what kind of skills we get. We're going to have kids in first grade and kindergarten right now. So they're going to be between, grade school and college and graduate school. 20 years from now, they're coming out and joining the world, right? So we've got to inculcate in them now certain way of approaching information and new material and collaboration and everything else. And I just don't know I don't have the big picture, so I can't, I don't really have I don't have the detail either. I mean, I'm sort of, but I'm asking these questions because I don't know how to
Thank you.
kind of put it on the
Excellent
table.
All right,
questions.
we've got an assignment, everyone.
Mr. Marchese, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because I think what Mr. Vail is getting at is that we're not professional educators, like you and Mrs. Kane, who did teach for a long time. I think we have a vested interest in the schools, except Mr. Hayes, hopefully soon, you'll get married and have a few kids. But we have a vested interest in the school system. We have children here, so we're participating because we want to get involved and make sure that we provide the best education for our kids. But yet, I think what Mr. Vail is getting at is that he just wants to make sure he's making the right decisions and that he has all the information that we're heading in the right direction. But I want to echo what Mrs. Kane said, is that we do have phenomenal administrators. The principals, they're in the schools day in and day out. They know what's needed. They have their school councils, so we use their best judgment to bring the advice to us in which way the direction the school needs to go. So I agree with you, Mr. Vail. I mean, I don't have all the answers either, but I think we do have a great administration here. We do have a great school system that we can count on to lead, send us in the right direction.
Mr. Hayes?
Just two suggestions. Superintendent, could you provide us with maybe a suggested reading list, scholarly articles and books on 21st century classrooms and other, topics, and maybe Mr. Vail and I can start a book club or something. And secondly, could we set aside agenda time at upcoming meetings to discuss some of the sort of big questions that Mr. Vail has presented tonight, has presented in the past, and will present in the future?
I think that's a great idea, and because
No pressure, though, right?
we can provide him with some of that data, so I'll invite some of my colleagues back.
And one suggestion with the suggested reading is every time you assign a book to your your leadership team, I know you have at least one a year, probably more, to also assign that to the school committee, because I would definitely read them.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Is that all set for tonight? Thank you, Mr. Vail. That was great. All right, now
I just had two other pieces in my report. I just want to remind everyone of the Halloween walk for Wilmington Education Foundation happening Friday in the K-8 buildings, and we're hoping that students will participate again this year. Excuse me. This is a fundraiser to encourage innovative projects for teachers and support the individual schools as well. Also, you heard this evening about No Bully Zone. I want to publicly acknowledge the Academy of Traditional Karate, who teamed up with me this summer to produce this book that was given to all kindergarten through 5th grade students, and it really is a wonderful resource for parents to use with their children at home as well around bullying.
That's great, thank you. Any questions? No. All right, now we're moving on to old business and the life-threatening food and other allergy policy, second reading.
Second reading of the policy. Any comments? If not, I'll bring it back November 10th for a vote. Okay.
Everything I've said, I've already said.
Okay.
I wanted to say, I've already said.
Yeah. Okay, is this online yet?
Mm-hmm. It's
Okay.
been online
So
for a
if
month.
it's been
I've gotten
online,
feedback. Any feedback's been
Okay.
incorporated in.
Right. All right.
Because it's already been read once, we don't actually have to read it aloud again.
No. No, we're all set. We're all set.
Loosening up my...
Thank you, Mr. Vail. All right, good, thank you. So if anyone has any questions in the public, you could read it online and then feel free to contact the superintendent. Should be glad to answer any questions on that. Okay, new business. MASC resolutions. I saw the email from Mr. Hayes, but when I read through these resolutions, it was like, okay, we can't just do them all. I think we're going to have to take a vote on each of the resolutions for Mr. Hayes to be able to, next Wednesday, to be able to participate. And because of the way they were written, I don't want to read them all. I'll read some highlights of them, and then if we'll have quick discussion, and we could be all night on this. So. Resolution, and then we'll see if the superintendent has anything to add to a couple of them, like this one. On the first one. Oh, or might be Mr. Ruggiero. Resolution 1, Special Education Circuit Breaker Extension. There are a lot of whereas. What this is about is at the annual meeting of the school superintendents and school committees, of which Mr. Hayes and myself are going to be representatives next week. They have an annual business meeting, and they, on Wednesday afternoon, they take a vote from all the people there of what their school committees decided on these resolutions. So they have a committee that puts together the resolutions that they think are important for the year, right? So we need to vote on these. And there are a lot of whereas, so it gives you the background on the whereas. But this first one is, therefore be it resolved that MASC file legislation which would have the effect of modifying the special education circuit breaker law to assist and encourage school districts to create programs to keep students in district. And the rationale that goes along is that this is one of the rare opportunities to provide the best educational environment for students and save money at the same time. From an educational perspective, the Individuals with Disabilities Act specifies that students must be placed in the least restrictive educational setting. And then it gives some more details about this cost and the savings. Mrs. Benton.
I recommend that you support this resolution. The reason why is presently, when we put a student in the collaborative in Racine, the cost is roughly around $32,000. That's not eligible for circuit breaker. It's not a high enough plateau. What this is suggesting is that you lower the number in order to get reimbursement. If you provide in-house or collaborative programs.
All right, excellent. Does anyone have any questions on that one? And so if we'll take a vote, all those in favor of this resolution? I think it's just, we can just do it that way, like against?
No.
Undecided?
Undecided.
Undecided, okay. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, 1 undecided.
Can I just speak to Mr. Bell? You know, I was not impressed with the rationale provided behind many of these resolutions. Virtually no supporting material for any of these.
No.
And I was and I went onto their website, just a copy of this, nothing else.
Right.
So I was kind of, you know, saddened to see that they're not really providing school committees across the state with a lot of information to base their votes on.
When you go to the meeting, you'll see that these people who are bringing this up, the people who submitted it, will talk and give you more information.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
it's difficult to
agree
vote
with you.
now
You
before
can't-
you hear what they're
Exactly,
saying. Yeah.
exactly. We're kind of voting in the dark, but, okay.
I mean, I guess that's part of my reluctance, one way or the other. I mean, I just don't, obviously, there's some lobby that's kind of in favor of this, and it boils down to money, but I just have a sense, like, I don't know how many students this affects, how much money they're talking about, what the implications are. There's just so little information with which to sort of balance competing objectives, and my sense of it is, you know, it was set up the way it is for some reason at some point, and maybe the underlying rationale behind that was flawed to begin with, or maybe it's changed. I just don't know.
Right.
Right. And to have something like this in half a page in 5 minutes, I just don't have enough information really to be able to balance these competing assessments in this type of a context.
That's fine, that's okay. Mr. Marchese?
So do we have a final vote on the first one?
5 to 1?
I would actually change mine
4
to an abstention.
Okay.
Now that I'm just reading this and looking at it for a second here.
Okay. Basically, what they're going to do, they're not going to ask Robert if it's 5 to 1 or 4 to 3. They're going to say, you know, pass or fail.
I do understand there's going to be a Delegate for Dummies course half an hour before the actual
Yes.
meeting, so I will be
Yes.
attending that. I won't let you down.
I'll be with you.
You'll be good.
I'll be with you. Okay. Resolution 2 is charter school authorization. And what they want to do is shift funding for charters to the districts that approve them. So therefore, let it be resolved that Massachusetts Association of School Committees file legislation before the general court to establish a charter school authorization and funding system, providing for the following. And then it goes into 4 different things. Approval of a Horace Mann charter school application by the local school committee, approval of the charter school application by the district or regional school committee, approval of a charter school application by the voters of a school district or region, and approval of a charter school application by the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, without approval of either the school committee or the voters of the district and region. It's a very complicated. What do we think?
Quick question, sir. Just out of curiosity, if for some reason there's, we end up having, because I find this one extremely confusing. I don't know a lot as it is about charter schools.
Right.
If for some reason we can't come to a conclusion or can he abstain during the, okay.
We can say that we didn't want to vote on this one, and when they have the discussion, Robert can say, our committee, for a number of the reasons.
And this one in particular, charter
Yes.
schools in Wilmington isn't I don't think is a huge issue, as far as I know, right? So maybe this is something we want to abstain on.
Right. How do people feel? I'm for it. Abstain, yeah. Okay. And so resolution 2 will abstain on.
Sure, he's down.
Okay, resolution 3, MCAS scores in 766 approved schools. All right, where is it? Therefore, be it resolved that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education require 766 approved schools, including non-public institutions who serve Massachusetts students, to report publicly their aggregate MCAS scores and growth information, but in the process preserve and protect the confidentiality of individual students. So the 766 schools receive public funding through tuitions paid by the sending districts, and they are not now held publicly accountable for the results. So we would pay money to those schools. Are we involved in this?
I don't quite understand why they want this. We know, we get the MCAS results of the students in Wilmington that are in these programs, so I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. I'd recommend not.
So we already get the information, this is just trying to put it on the
I'm not
books,
sure
even though we
what
get it anyway.
the ulterior motive is behind this one, but
Right.
it's obviously political.
And I will note that only one school committee is submitting,
No, it's the big, it's our
Oh,
board
on
of
the board.
directors.
Oh, I was looking at the
Yeah,
next one, sorry.
no, this one's
and I
done
don't-
by the board of directors, which means
Oh.
it is political.
Yeah.
So how do we feel about, do we feel like abstaining from this one?
Just take it out, just
Stay out of it.
We don't want this one, okay. Here's a charter school one again, resolution 4, charter school, yes, I'm sorry, Ms.
Can I
McKissick.
have a formal vote to abstain, everybody?
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Who would like to vote to abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain, everybody, okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, charter school funding formula submitted by the Everett School Committee. Be it resolved that the legislature should change the funding formula for charter schools. The charter school will receive funding based on the base rate components of student enrollment from the sending district. Charters would be reimbursed less for high-performing students or students who are not in high-risk cohorts.
I would say that since we abstained on the initial charter school resolution, that we abstain on this one.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so, I agree. How many, are all those who vote to abstain? Okay, unanimous. Any appointed state official, appointed board or receiver to coerce the restructuring of any school district and its governance without the expressed approval of the school committee, city council, town meeting, town council, and voters of each affected community. So what it means is there's communities that, because of their size, the state is pushing to have them regionalized. And our board of directors is totally against that. So personally,
Wait, no, they're for this. They're asking.
they're for this.
Yes.
But they have to get the approval. Right now, the state is could force them to do it without the approval of the people involved. So what they're saying is that you have to involve you have to involve the community. So if they were gonna say Wilmington and Tewksbury have to regionalize, they have to get together. Right now, apparently, that's what the state could possibly do. And they're saying that without going through the Tewksbury School Committee and the Board of Selectmen, et cetera, and the Wilmington School Committee Board of Selectmen.
This one I would recommend that you vote in favor.
I would
Okay,
too.
all right, yeah, so this is
Yeah,
saying that.
so I'm saying I think
that
we should go with this one.
So
We don't
basically
want them
this
to take local authority away from
Okay,
it.
there we go.
So this is something that could actually affect Wilmington?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. All right, so all those in favor of voting yes on this one? Okay, and Mr. Vail, what do you think?
I think I'm going to abstain, and I don't even think it's a matter of principle, actually. I think it's, I think I'm going to abstain because I'm just not sure about this. If a school district were in bankruptcy and there was a receiver appointed, or there were two adjacent ones that were insolvent, why couldn't the state just consolidate them?
Because it takes it away from those two communities. It takes.
Local control away from
Local control.
those two communities that are doing fine.
Or that are insolvent.
Yeah, again, I'm just, I guess, there's just a lot of permutations.
Mr. Villa, at the last meeting, you said that these resolutions were simple, they were common sense. Do you want to amend your statement? Or was that just last year?
It was last year, so we're so
I guess it was
easy.
simple and common sense because I think I abstained when I was there on almost all of it last year. I think I was doing what I say, it's like,
Now,
you know.
this one is pertinent to Wilmington. I'd like to have the superintendent's view
Yeah,
on
I
this.
wasn't really for any, I mean, the ones I was for were something like, I think one of them I was for was said something like, advocate before the legislature that it, provides adequate funding for public education in the Commonwealth.
Yes,
Well,
they were
yeah,
like
I was
that.
like, okay, that sounds good.
That's good.
But
Resolution
sort of a
6
mom
is
and apple pie.
mid-year retirement submitted by King Philip Regional School Committee.
Excuse me, Mrs. King?
Yes.
I'm sorry, so do we have a formal vote on?
5 to 1.
On 5? Okay.
Yeah. Therefore, it be resolved that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees file legislation that would end the practice of educator retirements during the school year, that while convenient for eligible educators, is not in the best interest of the students. And we had an example of that tonight, where we have 2 educators who, during the school year, are retiring. I'm not sure how it affects us, if it does affect, well, it definitely affects us. I don't know how you feel about that. That's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
No
I'm
comment?
going to abstain. I'm going to abstain.
That's a good idea. Yes, Dr.
Not being a
Quinn.
teacher, why is this a tough one?
Because, for instance, the 2 teachers tonight were both kindergarten teachers. To have started them in a kindergarten class and then take them out in October when they retire is just kindergarten students are not, that would be
Oh,
really
no,
tough to handle. So what this
Oh, I
is
guess,
saying is,
okay.
if this went through, they would not have been able, they would have either had to retire in the summer and take less money in their retirement, or go the whole school year.
So you're saying that's not a good idea?
I'm saying, I don't know what you think about it.
Okay.
I'm not,
See, I support this resolution.
Yeah, could I
Okay.
just say?
Yes,
What is
go
the
ahead.
flip side? So what
Right.
are, and I hate to single out the 2 wonderful women that were here earlier.
Yeah, let's not go there.
So
Let's
let's not
go
go
on to
there.
the
In
idea.
general, what would you, what are the retiring teachers being paid to do during the school year when they're not teaching? Are we keeping them busy with other work?
Well, I mean, those were 2 unique situations where I was able to do that based on the amount of time. What I think this resolution is trying to stop is, for example, say, a 3rd grade teacher or a AP history teacher, their birth date is in February, they retire, walk out the door, and then you're scrambling to find an AP history teacher or a physics teacher, the difficulty of it. That's the, downside of having them leave in the middle of the year.
but then the other side is, anyone has the right to retire whenever they want. Like, a day that they want to retire, they can retire,
Right.
So
So would this be,
it's
would
a
this be
personal
legal?
versus a,
So what they're asking is for the legislature, they want to change the law, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Dr. Quick?
I don't think teachers really can, my personal opinion is I don't think teachers really can fall under that, in order to suit the best needs of the children. I think that, that they should, my personal opinion is they should finish out the school year. But that's just my, my personal opinion. to get the best, if somebody just leaves, it can have a very detrimental effect on the children. And if that is our goal, then to me, I think that's a no-brainer for me, but that's just me.
Mr. Bill?
Yeah, I don't actually read this as limiting the right to retire. I think you can still retire anytime you want. I sort of read this as saying, when does your pension benefit vest for another sort of level of earnings or seniority? And I think it was sort of saying that it should be changed so that you've got to finish out the school year in which you're going to achieve your maximum pension benefit eligibility. If you want to retire with that level of maximum pension benefit eligibility, if you retire at some point during the year.
No,
think you're reading a little
Mr.
too much
Vail,
into it.
you actually read it incorrectly. It even says right here, the Masters Association School Committee Association filed legislation that would end the practice of educator requirements during the school year. While convenient for eligible educators, it is not in the best interest of the students. So this would end, retiring in the middle of the school year.
Okay. Because I was reading some of the whereases up above where it says, whereas educators frequently reach the point in their service where the maximum possible pension is achieved during the academic year.
Yeah, but we need to read as therefore it be it resolved. That's what they're asking for.
And I guess I would just ask a question too, is this something that is currently addressed in collective bargaining agreements? Or can be addressed in a collective bargaining agreement? I mean, or why not have, oh, by the way, one of the things that can be done is amendments to these resolutions can be proposed.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess part of it might be to suggest that if the law is not clear on this aspect, to recommend that the law be changed so that this issue can be settled as a matter of collective bargaining and leave it between the bargaining units and the employer.
Except right now, the law is clear that you can retire anytime.
Right, and
So
I
it's
still
not
think, I think people can retire at a time. I think the question is,
Whether they get their
whether they
pension.
get the full, when do they get the credit for the next level of pension benefit?
The question.
Yeah. Okay, we all set? We all know what we want to vote? Okay, all those in favor of this legislation? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, okay. All those opposed? Me?
And one abstention.
And 1 abstention, okay. 4, 1 abstain, okay. And
Last one.
Resolution 7, mid-year budget cuts. Oh, this one's interesting. Be it resolved, therefore be it resolved that the Mass Association of School Committees urges the legislature to continue to maintain the requirement that all changes to Chapter 70 local aid appropriation be approved by the general court, and further be it resolved that the legislature further prohibit changes to the appropriations for public schools without the consent of the general court, and further that the governor and legislature be urged not to enact mid-fiscal year budget rescissions, including so-called 9C cuts to appropriations for public schools during fiscal year 2011. School districts carefully craft their budgets in the leanest manner. Mid-year state financial assistance reductions not only undermine the local fiscal situation, but require additional cuts because they can come mid-year when these reductions only exacerbate already difficult conditions. So what do we think on that one?
Well, in an ideal world, but I mean, the reality is, if the state government is not functioning, they have to cut funds in order to balance the budget.
Right.
They're going to have to do it. I mean, what else are they going to do? Raise taxes? I mean, that's the alternative.
All right. But I think what they're trying to say is, don't cut these funds
Right.
now, or wait.
Which I would support.
Which makes sense. I'd support this.
Doesn't the general court usually want to punt on this stuff, and they
Yes.
affirmatively grant authority to the governor to sort of,
Yes.
to slice and dice away, and then they can say,
Right.
hey, we didn't do it,
Yeah,
he
exactly.
did it?
Right.
Yep, that's what happened before.
I think these are very political issues. Very political. So how many people agree with, all those in favor of this one? I'm in favor of this one.
I would say.
Yeah, not to cut funding in the middle of the year. Once you've made your budget, keep it.
How realistic it is, I don't know, but.
I know it's not, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Mr. Vail abstain?
I'm against it.
1 against. Okay, 5 to 1. Thank you. All right.
For the record,
And then-
write this down, Peggy. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead, no what?
Just next year, I will be attending the conference, but I'm not going to be the delegate.
I'll go back to be the
Okay,
delegate. We're still here. And the proposals to the bylaws, I don't think we have to go over them, they're very clear. So we'll be all set with that, thank you.
This is real quick so we can get to
Yep,
the
we have to get going here.
raffle.
We haven't been this late in a long time. All right, the end of the year financial report, Mr. Ruggiero had,
Just what, we just included in your packet, the end of the year report for fiscal 10, and just point out that we are in good shape.
we've
We're in
already
good shape.
discussed this in the past, so it's just another way of having it presented to us.
I'd like to publicly thank Mr. Ruggiero for answering all my questions via email.
Thank you.
We have a request from Strings Attached.
We have a nice thing to do now.
Oh.
Okay. What happened? We lost it?
Okay.
Okay, all right, we're gonna get that.
Thank you.
Plan her.
Thank you.
Can we explain what this is?
This is for the London trip?
Yes, it's the tour company that we use for our international travel donates a trip to London for the Martin Luther King weekend that we can raffle off to help defray the cost of our children traveling. And we're proud to say we raised over $9,000 with this raffle. So thank you to our community and to everyone who supported this.
Yeah, it looks like it.
The winner is Anthony Fruciano, Fruciano.
Maureen's husband. Awesome, thank you. I should take that from you.
We call in Anthony to cut your...
Thank you very much.
Oh, my God, thank you. Oh, good. Nice.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Anthony. That's terrific.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, we should publicly thank the Strings Attached group and the parents for everything that you do for the students, and you continue on. It's constant that you're working for the students, and the program that we have is so fantastic, and we really appreciate everything you do. Thank you. Okay, let me see, delegations. There are delegations, okay. Oh, yes, Mr. Costa?
Steve Costa, 125 Penrose. I got a question on that vote that we just had taken on the Mass School Committee meeting that Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Kane have attended. I would strongly urge the board to rescind the first vote that they took tonight on that funding. That is a very, very important tool, because we all know in the school district, I was one of those children in 1994 that was sent from Wilmington High School to a collaborative program with the town, taking care of my education so duly and the law that the special ed. So we're doing that, and in trying to, with the space that we don't have in the high school and in the middle school, is we really don't have a lot of space to implement those special programs for kids that are severely disabled, and that, or not even severely disabled, but their services cannot be provided by the school district. I mean, we've been battling this for a good 25, 30 years in the town that I know of, me being a special ed advocate for the last 10. It's really one of those hot button issues up in the up the State House, because the circuit breaker side of things, a lot of times, as Mrs. Benton indicated, when they don't hit that threshold, then the town ends up eating the tuition. And Mrs. Benton would be the first one to tell you, the lab collaborative is not a cheap collaborative for this town to send any child to, and that's where they decided to send me. So I would strongly urge you guys to reconsider that vote, because it would really be a big problem if a lot of towns, cities and towns are fiscally strapped. And I know probably a good out of the 351 cities and towns, and I sit on the Special Needs Advisory Council for the state of Massachusetts, And that's one of the biggest issues that got brought to us last month, and I knew it was going to come up sooner or later, that we said we were going to make a staunch report saying that at least 200 cities and towns were not fiscally able to do that. We're not being fiscally, we can't do it. And we know in the town of Wilmington, we might be better off than the town of Tewksbury, the town of, Hanley, or one of those cities that doesn't have the funding there. So,
Mr. Costa, what we voted for was that, okay, wait a second. You changed the circuit breaker to enable more districts to create or expand their in-district and collaborative offerings. But if we can't expand it, we don't have to expand it. So it just enables those people who can to expand their offerings.
but if you have enough that if they can't offer it, that law is a trick law. It's going to be trick when it goes to general court, because it's not going to be written that way. It's not going to be written in that context. The law's going to change.
We can only go by what they've presented us with, and we have to hope that it will be written that way.
You hope and pray that they don't change it in the last minute and amend the law, and it doesn't get amended 7 times in the House or in the Senate. In the long run, I'm just looking out for the best interests of the community in the long run.
No, you're absolutely right, but I think what it's doing is it's just opening it up for other districts. For us, we already have programs both in the middle school and the high school, as many as we need or can handle at this point. So this law is not going to affect us, really. But it gives an opportunity, should something come up that we could use, we could work out another program, then we'd have the ability to do it.
I mean, I know in just the contents of what's gone on up the State House in the last year or so, what they're trying to do now is eliminate completely a threshold on circuit breaker and make the town absorb the whole of that tuition, because they're feeling that the district can't educate the kid. Then why are we giving you half the money when we're strapped? These are all little cuts they're going to start making up in the State House. I mean, I'm just giving you a full warning. It's already starting in place. Representative Maselli is one of the keynote speakers on that one, that they're going to start cutting funding. And it's going to start coming down through the trickle effect, even if question 3 gets, is enacted in law. I mean, we have to look at, I don't have a crystal ball, but a lot of people in the state are really looking at that law going, oh, this could help us, not hurt us in the long run.
Right.
Help our pockets, not the towns.
For us as a school committee, we have to base our decisions on what information we have, and so I really think we're on the same side on this.
Exactly. I just want to make it clear that you have people that are looking out for the best interests of the kids of this community. I help all the parents of the town if they ever want to call me and need some advice on special needs laws.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Mr. Costa. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hayes.
Three quick things. First of all, Mr. Costa, thank you for attending the meeting. It's always nice to actually have delegations. It doesn't happen very often. Number 2, I'm sort of a proponent of putting the school committee packet, the things that aren't executive sessions, so the things that can be publicly released. I'm an advocate of putting them online. So we post our agenda, we post our minutes, and then how about posting the meeting packet? And, would that be of something of interest to you if you had come to this meeting and you would have been able to have read the resolution before coming here? Would that have helped you out?
Well, I knew that the principals of all the schools were coming. I have a 4-year-old entering the system next year, so I'm pretty much want to get up to speed on what's going on in the schools. And every principal has pretty much showed me that this system is still one of the top in the district. We have some outstanding educators and outstanding principals that do an outstanding job.
Sure.
And I mean, I coached scholastically in Winchester, and Mr. McAuliffe has set into place with the coaches a lot of stuff that instilled with the principals. Mr. Tracy, I've seen him do it firsthand with all these student athletes. So, I mean, we have some great educators here.
Yeah, that's a good positive remark. I guess so. My point would just be, I think it's difficult for people at home to follow along watching on WCTV or attending when they don't have the meeting packet in front of them because they don't always know what we're talking about. I know in Tewksbury, for instance, their chairperson goes on to a community forum, we'll call it, and posts the PDF of the school committee packet for the particular meeting. And I think that's something that I would certainly be interested in seeing us do. Try to be as transparent as possible and give the community the ability to read what we're reading when we base our decisions. And the third quick thing is reading the school committee policy handbook for the second time. I finally got through it for a second time. There is something about the school committee having a representative to the State House on both federal and state issues. And I think that's, because I don't think a lot of us are aware of everything that's going, maybe some more than others, but most of us aren't aware of what's going on at the State House at the moment in regards to education. And I think it might be in our interest to designate someone from this school committee or a designee, it doesn't have to be someone from the committee, but someone to meet with our our state reps every once in a while and report back to us, or for them to report to us directly, just to get a better sense of what's going on at the State House relative to education. So I think that would be a very good idea, and I think it's consistent with our policy. So just throw that out there as well.
All right, thank you. Okay, everybody, no other delegations?
I have one more question. This has to do with the, maybe Mrs. McMenamin can answer this question a little better. During your,
See what it is, because if it's not based on our agenda, we're not going to put Ms. McMenamin on the
there was a question that there was when she discussed the curriculum of the MCAS. I looked at the MCAS scores online for the town just to get an idea of what was going on. It looked to me, I can't figure the formula out, but it looked to me on the MCAS score for the middle school alone, it looked like the English language was lower or higher than the mathematics from last year's. I mean, I couldn't.
It's typically higher.
Decipher, I got a 47, so I didn't know where the decipher was.
It's typically higher. The
Okay.
English has outperformed math in the past,
Okay.
but we're now leveling off.
Okay, because I didn't understand it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Board members, questions and comments? I believe this week it's this side? Your side. All right, Mr. Vail.
Well, I have a few, continuing on what I sort of was mentioning before. I just thought I'd maybe bring the committee up to speed a little bit. I've been thinking a lot about some of the big picture items, and I had come across. I was watching actually was not the. Boy, this is going to sound terrible. So I had nothing better to do. I was watching C-SPAN. But it was which I don't know, I was flipping channels, but it was an interview with Michio Kaku, the physicist, and who runs, he's on Nova and all these other shows. And he said, so there was an interview, and they asked him how he got interested in this stuff. And his parents were Japanese Americans. They were interned in a concentration camp during World War II. And he was born in the U.S. and raised in the U.S., and his father was a gardener and his mother was a maid. And he just got very interested in high school and everything else. So as part of the high school science project, he built a particle accelerator in his garage in Southern California. And he contacted Westinghouse, and he was donated a couple of giant transformers and everything else. And he showed this at a science fair and drew the attention of, I think it was Mr. Oppenheimer or somebody else. And then got a full ride scholarship to Harvard and everything. So I was sort of thinking, how do we, I was sort of trying to bring this back to what we're doing here in Wilmington. I was thinking, how do we instill this type of curiosity and inventiveness in the kids, in all of our kids, to try and, sort of figure stuff out and go and ask questions and pull it all together. So I actually ended up sending an email to Superintendent Benton and Chairwoman Kane, just sort of saying this is fascinating. So what do we need to do? And I was like, I sort of asked the question: is there any kind of endowment that could be established or funds that could be raised that for kids at whatever level to apply to get sort of $500 or $1,000 to pursue some kind of independent study or analysis or something along those lines? How do we encourage and sort of thinking about 21st century skills and going out there and doing other interesting things. I mean, Michio Kaku did this 50 years ago. And whether it's programming the latest, greatest application for an iPad or conducting, if you go to the library and you get Make Magazine, they'll tell you how to, cook up DNA in your own kitchen and have some kind of DNA reaction using catalysts and everything else that you could just go get at the store. I'm just trying to figure out how do we get kids to want to do that. So my questions and my goals for the school improvement plan, for the strategic plan, for us, is to try and come up with whatever support mechanisms that are not high, big-ticket items, but that we can go out and engage and collaborate with, whether it's, I'm going to pull a lot of strands of things together, whether it's a cleaner spot. I mean, we had local business providing a few $100, but Wilmington is fortunate in that we have major industrial and commercial companies located here. I think in Wilmington is the new Center for Green, I think this came up a year ago, the new Center for Green Chemistry out of Lowell is based in Wilmington. There's a lot of very exciting things happening at the ITT Tech program. So how do we form up these partnerships? How do we get all of our kids involved in it and set up the programs and the policy goals and the support mechanisms to have everyone take advantage of it? And I don't think it really matters so much whether it's, and I like this a lot too, and one of the things I wanted to mention before was the DECA program. They're talking about potentially coming up with a sort of a multidisciplinary course in sports and entertainment marketing, right? Which I thought was a brilliant concept because because it is interdisciplinary, and I'd like to see more. It came up before, this concept of team teaching, but it was limited to the context of sort of, I think, a teacher with a special education teacher in either math or reading or something. And the team teaching that I'm sort of thinking we could implement is more of that multidisciplinary thing where you'd have a course and it'd be team taught by, perhaps in something like sports and entertainment marketing, a teacher with business or math experience, but also a teacher with international experience, and maybe a teacher with regulatory or, you can sort of think about the world of sectors that something like sports and entertainment marketing crosses, and in one classroom have that kind of expertise brought in. So these are some of the concepts, and I know that that's starting to be implemented. I don't know how many other high schools, or I don't really know who's doing it, but I do know there's graduate schools and others that are really pursuing this idea of sort of team teaching and trying to go. Anyway, so it's a wide-ranging group of thoughts. Hopefully there's a strand of something that makes sense weaving its way throughout all of that. But I did also want to say that I thought it was a really interesting meeting, and of course my congratulations to Catherine Aoki for earning the certificate, and also congratulations to our retiring teachers. Thrilling to see them again, and hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you.
Okay. On that note, Quincy, it makes me think of the term "think globally, act locally." Your ideas are wonderful. It's very broad, but I think they're great ideas. I did want to mention a couple things. First of all, I don't know if Mrs. Benton had mentioned to you some of the resources for things that you were talking about, the school business collaborative that is already currently in place at the Wilmington Education Foundation. Yes. We are currently, I'm on the finance subcommittee for them, and we're currently trying to think of other additional ways to help do these types of funding. So I definitely think that that's something that we can hopefully work for towards the future. I also wanted to congratulate Mrs. Morano and Ms. Farrow. My daughter absolutely loved Mrs. Morano, and I'm very depressed that my youngest will not have the opportunity to learn from her. And the last thing I wanted to say was I'm really looking forward to the Walk for WEF. Can't wait, everybody get involved, and always we're online, and become a WEF friend. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. Okay, Mr. Marchese?
So first of all, to Anthony Frugiano, congratulations. You know, hopefully you have a great trip. Now to Mr. Vale, your comments, as always, are very thought-provoking and interesting. But you know something? But that's what we need on committees like this, because we can't just be a committee of yes men or no men or whatever, because we got elected these positions to be out there and act, you know, and bring ideas forth. So I think it's great that you do have these ideas, and I encourage you to keep doing it, because that energizes the rest of us to say, hey, wait a minute, that's a great idea. You know, why don't we think about that? Or maybe take a big piece of the picture and slice off something and create something out of it. So I thank you for your enthusiasm and your ideas, so keep it up. So tonight's been an interesting evening. We had some great discussion, and we're off to a great year this year. So, and that's it, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hayes?
I'm going to keep it quick tonight. I do have some subcommittee reports, though, so I'm kind of cheating here. But obviously, everyone have a safe and happy Halloween. I'm giving out the candy at my house. We're going to go with king-size bars. That's the way to go.
And
if
you want to give out your address?
No, better not. And if you come to my house and you hear screaming, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just watching the Patriots game. So I want to make that clear. And the second thing is, I think there's an election next week. Is that right, Mr. Marchese?
Correct. Tuesday, November 2nd.
There is, right. And I just want to encourage everyone to get out and vote, regardless of who you're voting for. Best of luck to all our local candidates. And I would say, in particular, pay attention to question number 3, ballot question number 3. Do your research on that before you're casting your vote, and think about what all the ballot questions can do, but particularly number 3, I guess, for to the Wilmington school system. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
All right, I want to say thank you to everybody who came and did a lot of work. Thank you. And good luck to the Wilmington Wildcats football team. I hope they make it all the way. I hope next time we meet, we can say we have a championship. So, and happy Halloween. That's it.
Thank you. And tonight, we've had enough, so I have no comments tonight, except ditto from everybody. It was very good. Okay, our next item is a subcommittee report from Mr. Hayes regarding the executive session minutes.
Sure. So just real quickly, this was in all your school committee packets. I'm not going to read it all, but I will read some selections. Policy Subcommittee, which consists of Mr. Vale, myself, and non-voting members, Chairwoman Kane and Superintendent Benton. This Policy Subcommittee recognizes the need for the school committee to be in compliance with both school committee policy and state law in regards to the examination and, when appropriate, public release of executive session minutes. So you can read what the school committee policy says, and I provided the reference, and in bold it says, the committee will review executive session minutes for possible declassification at least once each year. State law, which I gave the page reference to the open meeting law guide that Superintendent Benton had given us a few months ago. In bold, it says the public body, the school committee, is also required to periodically review the executive session minutes to determine whether continued non-disclosure is warranted, and such determination must be included in the subsequent meeting minutes. So at our last subcommittee meeting on the 29th of last month, and this was after consultation with Mask Field Director Mike Gilbert, who was contacted via Maryland. The policy subcommittee unanimously concluded that the school committee must, and we didn't take a formal vote, but I think it was unanimous, you know, concluded that the school committee must develop procedures to regularly review and, when proper, release executive session minutes. The policy subcommittee felt it most practical and efficient for an executive session minutes subcommittee to be created. And this subcommittee, consisting of two committee members plus the chair and the superintendent as ex officio members, would meet semi-annually to review executive session minutes and make recommendations for public release to the entire school committee. The school committee would then vote on the executive session minutes subcommittee's recommendations. Like all subcommittees, the chairwoman would have, this would require a positive vote for the subcommittee to be formed, and Chairwoman Kane would have the authority to appoint the members. And to reiterate, the policy subcommittee strongly urges the school committee to adopt this recommendation of creating an executive session minutes subcommittee. So just what we need, another subcommittee.
I see all the hands going up. If you would think about this over the next week or so, and if you'd like to volunteer for that subcommittee, I'll appoint at the next meeting.
Well, I think we have to vote
vote.
establishment. No, we want,
What
no,
do
at
we
the
want
next
to do?
meeting, we're going to vote whether to establish
Establish
this
the
committee.
subcommittee.
Yes.
Oh, so we'll do it at the next meeting?
Yes.
At the next meeting, yeah.
We have to do a...
First reading.
Right, this is the first reading, yeah.
Did anyone have any questions on that one? I think it's pretty, okay. And I guess what we're going to do is we're going to start with the 2009 minutes and
Right.
then move on to the 2010 minutes at the next meeting.
So for those of you who are thinking about being on that committee, it'll only be a matter of meeting like twice a week. It's not meeting every month or every week, okay?
And, I'm sorry, Technology Task Force
Yes,
meeting minutes,
Technology Task Force,
or not minutes, notes, my notes. I attended a Technology Task Force meeting on October 7th at the Roman House. Discussed a lot of great things. I'm just going to highlight a few of them. Technology integration at the Butwell, Wildwood, Woburn, Shawshene, West and North. Talked about Renzulli, which was mentioned tonight. Renzulli is a web-based program for grades 4 and 5 where you can create online homework assignments that cover the entire curriculum. 86 fourth grade students emailed their teachers saying they really enjoyed it. There's an after-school at-risk group, and recently a parent workshop on how to use Renzulli was held, which I think was referenced earlier. Study Island, a web-based program for grades 1 through 5, asks MCAS-type questions. There's been several workshops for teachers recently, which I think was mentioned, and there's also an after-school at-risk group. Spelling City, which is from Houghton Mifflin, grades 1 through 5. It's being used at both home and school, and it has lots of spelling lists, puzzles, and spelling games. Tux Paint, which is an open source program currently in use in grades 1 through 3, and kindergarten teachers are currently being trained. And this is used by students for drawing, patterning, and word splashes. We've mentioned Thinkfinity in the past. Mimeo and MimioPads are now available at all 4 elementary schools, and there's 2 teacher workshops happening next month on those. And several teachers are using ePals, which I guess is like electronic pen pals, which kind of seems like a neat thing to do. Regarding report cards, on report cards in the elementary schools, there is now a technology section for grading. And I thought a good quote here, technology has become a real standard. Teachers need to grade it, so teachers need to teach it. Neil Ellis went on for about 20 minutes talking about all the upgrades. I mean no disrespect. It was sort of riveting, I guess. So Neil talked about all the upgrades his department made over the summer, quite a long list. Middle school technology survey, I found this to be one of the most interesting things. Mr. Ellis thinks the middle school should, in the future, purchase less printers and more projectors. In terms of priorities, teachers were asked to choose one or the other, and 35 middle school teachers wanted projectors, and only 7 wanted printers. Printers cost $1,200 a piece, the ones that we purchase. Projectors are about $500 to $600 a piece, so there's a big savings there. And right now, Mr. Ellis says that there's a printer in every other classroom. And Mr. Ellis, and I think the rest of the task force, said that smart boards are pretty much off the table because they're too expensive, but Mimeo boards are the way to go. They cost 50% less, and I guess you need a projector installed before you can get the Mimeo board. So I think that also may have skewed why some of the teachers voted for the projector rather than the printer. That was brought up. I don't know. Mr. Ellis noted that there isn't nearly enough money. So this is something I thought that was important. Mr. Ellis noted that there isn't nearly enough money in his budget to replace PCs throughout the district on their recommended levels of every 4 years. And on a personal note, I think this is something I'd like us to keep in mind when it comes time to budget for FY12. I mean, obviously, we may not have the money, but maybe we could, at least increase the budget a bit so more computers can be upgraded. And then finally, Mr. Ellis talked about fiber optics. Each school is limited by the number of PCs they can have and how fast they'll go because the schools in the town don't have fiber optics yet. And Mr. Ellis indicated that the town manager will look to address this at the April town meeting as a capital improvement. And Mr. Ellis said, and I think the rest of the task force agreed, that the town absolutely needs to go to fiber optics. All the surrounding towns, except for Tewksbury, already have fiber optics. So this is something we definitely need to go towards. And that's basically my notes.
We're going to, Paul and I are going to work with the town manager on a capital
Okay.
item.
For fiber optics? Great. And that's
Thank you. Mr. Hayes is our detail man. That was so really detailed. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's like we were there. Excellent. All right. Correspondence?
None.
Sorry. Okey doke. Our next meeting will be November 10th, and Mr. Hayes and I will have an update on the conference for you. So we'll put that on the agenda, update on the conference. And we'll see how Mr. Hayes did with the voting the first time.
You're going to be there to help me, Peggy?
I will be there to help you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
No one ever answers when I say that.
You don't want to? Yeah, no, yeah. Make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight.